The email arrived while I was organizing files in my cubicle. Mandatory meeting in conference room A for all accounting staff. I glanced at my brother Marcus's office, his nameplate gleaming with senior financial manager, while mine read simply account coordinator. He caught my eye through the glass walls and smirked, adjusting his designer blazer. I was used to his condescension ever since I chose to start working right after high school instead of going to college like him. Marcus had treated me like I was beneath him when he helped me get an entry-level position at his company 2 years ago. He made sure everyone knew it was charity for his uneducated sister. What I never told him was that while he spent 4 years getting his finance degree, I'd been taking online courses in forensic accounting and computer security. My entry-level position was perfect for what I really wanted to learn: how money actually flowed through major corporations. The conference room was packed when I arrived. Marcus stood at the front with our CEO, Mrs. Chen, looking grave. "We've discovered significant discrepancies in our accounts," he announced. $50,000 is missing, and we traced the unauthorized access to someone in this room. My heart started pounding as he clicked to the next slide showing login records from my employee ID. "The evidence is clear," he continued, his voice dripping with fake regret. "My own sister, who I gave a chance despite her limited qualifications, has betrayed that trust." Security guards appeared at the door as Marcus's words hung in the air. "We've already contacted the police," he added, "though I'm willing to show mercy if you confess now, Emily." I stayed silent, my hands steady as I gathered my belongings. I'd seen this coming for weeks. The way Marcus had been asking me to cover extra shifts, insisting I use his computer since mine was being upgraded. I documented everything, including the keylogger I discovered installed on my workstation last week. As security escorted me out, Marcus's voice carried down the hallway. "I guess it's true what they say about uneducated people. They always resort to stealing." What Marcus didn't know was that I'd been quietly building my case for months. The day he helped me get hired, I noticed irregularities in the company's books, patterns that suggested long-term embezzlement. I'd started tracking everything, watching as small discrepancies grew into larger ones, all leading back to one source: my perfect, educated brother. I spent that evening in my apartment, not crying as Marcus probably expected, but organizing my evidence. The keylogger he planted had been child's play to detect and document. I let it stay, curious to see his next move. Sure enough, he used it to frame me for transfers he'd been making for years. My phone rang around midnight, a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Emily Thompson?" "This is Amanda Richardson, the CEO's assistant." The voice was different from her office persona, sharper, more focused. "I saw something interesting on our security cameras today. Something about your brother installing software on your computer last week. Would you be willing to meet me tomorrow morning?" I smiled, thinking of the evidence folder on my encrypted drive. "Of course, Ms. Richardson. I have some things you might want to see as well." The next morning, I arrived at a small cafe far from the office. Ms. Richardson was already there, along with a woman she introduced as Detective Karen Wu from Corporate Security. "We've been investigating financial irregularities for months," Detective Wu explained, "but someone was always one step ahead, covering their tracks, until you arrived." I pulled out my laptop. 2 years ago, Marcus helped me get hired because he needed access to a clean employee ID for larger transfers. He'd been skimming small amounts for years, but he was getting greedy. He didn't think his uneducated sister would notice the patterns. Detective Wu's eyes widened as I walked them through my documentation. Years of suspicious transfers, all technically authorized but just irregular enough to raise flags if he knew where to look. Marcus's perfect record had protected him from surface-level audits. But he'd gotten sloppy when he thought he had me as a scapegoat. "The police are already investigating," Ms. Richardson said quietly, "but we needed this proof of premeditation, documentation of his methods. The hidden camera footage of him installing that keylogger was damning. But this," she gestured at my carefully organized evidence, "this shows the whole pattern." I nodded, then played my final card. "There's something else you should see." I pulled up records of identical patterns at Marcus's previous 2 employers, smaller amounts but the same methods. "I think you'll find he's been doing this for quite a while." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "I hope you're happy living on unemployment. No one will hire a thief." I shoved it to Ms. Richardson, who actually chuckled. He still has no idea, does he? My brother always assumed that without a college degree, I was stupid, I replied. He never bothered to check what I was actually learning all these years. The afternoon Marcus was arrested at his desk, I watched from Ms. Richardson's office as he was escorted out, screaming about mistakes and family loyalty. His designer blazer didn't look quite so impressive with handcuffs as an accessory. The evidence was overwhelming. The keylogger he'd installed had captured his own logging credentials, which he used to make transfers under my name. The hidden cameras showed him accessing my computer after hours, and my documentation provided the historical pattern that turned a single instance of fraud into a career-long crime spree. As Marcus was led away, I received another text, this time from our father. How could you do this to your brother? He gave you a job when no one else would. I didn't respond. They never believed in me anyway. Ms. Richardson cleared her throat. Miss Thompson, we find ourselves in need of a new senior financial manager, someone with experience in forensic accounting and a demonstrated ability to detect fraud. Would you be interested? I thought of Marcus's nameplate, his designer clothes, his constant reminders of my limited qualifications. I need to finish my certification first, I replied. I'm only 2 classes away. He smiled. Take all the time you need. The position will be waiting. That evening, as I packed up Marcus's office, now mine, I found a photo from his college graduation. He was beaming at the camera, holding his diploma like a shield. He'd spent years building an image of success while slowly stealing from every company that trusted him. I'd spent those same years actually learning, growing, preparing. The next text from Marcus came from county jail. You have to help me. I'm your brother. I placed his graduation photo in a box with his nameplate and designer blazer. The police would probably want them as evidence. No, I tagged back. I don't have to do anything. Educated people should know better than to commit fraud. Then I sat down at my new desk, opened my laptop, and started reviewing the company's security protocols. There was work to be done, and I earned my place at the table. No degree required. Updates from the prosecutor's office arrived regularly over the next few weeks. Marcus's previous employers were pressing charges, his perfect reputation crumbling as each new investigation uncovered more theft. Our parents, finally forced to face the truth about their golden child, stopped defending him and stopped attacking me. Ms. Richardson implemented every security recommendation I made, and the board approved a complete overhaul of our financial monitoring systems. I still attended my online classes, but now the company was paying for them. Turns out experience and skill matter more than how you got them. Marcus's preliminary hearing was scheduled for next month. His lawyer had reached out, suggesting I speak on his behalf about our close family bond. I declined. The evidence would speak for itself, just as it had all along. My new nameplate arrived today. Emily Thompson, Senior Financial Manager and Security Compliance Director. Not bad for someone who chose a different path to success. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about proving them wrong all along. Marcus's preliminary hearing fell on a rainy Tuesday morning. I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching my brother shuffle and wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of his usual designer clothes. He'd lost weight in county jail, and his carefully maintained appearance had faded. When he spotted me, he mouthed, "Please help me." But I kept my face neutral and opened my laptop to take notes. The evidence presentation took hours. Detective Wu testified about the security footage, walking the court through clips of Marcus installing the keylogger after hours. The forensic accountant I'd hired presented my documentation, now expanded with records from his previous employers. Each slide showed the same pattern. Small discrepancies growing larger, all traced back to Marcus's access credentials. During a break, our father approached me in the hallway. He looked older than I remembered, his confident posture replaced by a worried slouch. "Emily, please," he begged. "Marcus made a mistake, but he's still your brother. If you speak as a character witness, maybe." "A mistake?" I interrupted quietly. "He stole over $200,000 from 3 different companies. He tried to frame me for it. He would have let me go to jail. Dad, that's not a mistake. That's who he is. But he helped you get a job. Without him, I would have found another way to succeed. I always do. I gathered my belongings. He didn't help me get that job out of kindness. He needed someone to take the fall when he got caught. The only mistake he made was underestimating me. Back in the courtroom, Marcus's lawyer tried arguing that his previously exemplary character should be considered. The prosecutor countered by playing the security footage audio of Marcus mocking my education while setting me up to take the blame. The judge's expression hardened with each recording. "Your Honor," Marcus's lawyer attempted, "my client's sister holds a senior position at the company now. Surely that demonstrates the family's commitment to." "Miss Thompson earned that position by uncovering your client's crimes," the prosecutor interrupted. "The same crimes Mr. Marcus Thompson tried to pin on his sister because he assumed no one would believe someone without a college degree." Marcus crumbled visibly at that, finally seeing how completely his plan had backfired. The preliminary hearing ended with his case bound over for trial. Bail denied due to flight risk. As he was led away, he called out, "Emily, I'm sorry. I didn't mean." I packed up my laptop and left without looking back. The next few months brought changes I never expected. Ms. Richardson promoted me to Vice President of Financial Security, creating a new department focused on preventing exactly the kind of fraud Marcus had committed. My story spread through industry circles, leading to consulting requests from other companies wanting to audit their security protocols. Marcus's former colleagues who once looked down on me at his urging now sought my advice on career development. "College isn't the only path to success," I told them. "It's about what you learn, not where you learn it." The prosecution offered Marcus a plea deal, 15 years with possibility of parole after 7 in exchange for a full confession. He took it, probably hoping to maintain some control over the narrative. But his confession revealed even more than we'd known. He'd started stealing in college, using student organization funds to maintain his expensive lifestyle. After graduation, he refined his methods, always staying just ahead of detection until he decided to set me up as his fall guy. The day of his sentencing, I finally agreed to meet him in the holding cell. He clearly practiced his speech, tears falling perfectly as he spoke. "I was jealous," he admitted. "You were always so capable, making your own way, learning what you wanted. I had to follow Mom and Dad's perfect plan, get the perfect degree, live the perfect life. But it was never enough. So you decided to steal what you couldn't earn," I finished, "and blame it on me because you thought no one would believe I could catch you." "I'm your brother," he whispered. "Doesn't that mean anything?" I stood up. "It meant something when you helped me get hired. It meant something different when you tried to send me to prison. Now it just means I know exactly who you are." The judge sentenced him to the agreed-upon 15 years plus restitution. Our parents sat in the front row, finally accepting that their perfect son had built his success on lies. They tried to approach me after the sentencing, but I had a meeting to attend. That meeting changed everything. A major financial security firm had heard about my work on Marcus's case. They wanted to partner on developing fraud detection software based on my methodologies. The contract would make me a millionaire several times over. "We love that you learned this through experience," the CEO told me. "Anyone can follow textbook methods. You found patterns others missed because you looked where they didn't think to look." As I signed the contract, my phone buzzed with a message from the prison. Marcus had lost his appeal. He wanted me to help fund his commissary account since our parents couldn't afford to support him anymore. I deleted the message without responding. Later that week, I got an interesting email from Marcus's last victim, his previous employer. Their audit had revealed that he'd hidden some of his stolen funds in overseas accounts. They wanted to hire me to trace the money. The fee they offered would cover a down payment on the house I'd been eyeing. I took the job, of course. Let Marcus sit in prison, knowing that with every case I solved, every fraud I uncovered, I was building the career he tried to steal from me. His perfect degree hung on a prison wall, while my experience opened doors he never even knew existed. Our parents finally stopped trying to contact me after I blocked their numbers. They'd spent years praising Marcus's academic achievements while dismissing my practical experience. Now they could spend years visiting him in prison while reading about my success in the financial press. 5 years after Marcus's arrest, I stood at a podium accepting an industry award for innovation in financial security. My online degree hung in my office alongside certificates from specialized training programs, proof that education comes in many forms. A reporter asked about my unusual career path. "Success isn't about where you start," I told her. It's about paying attention, learning constantly, and being ready when opportunity appears. Sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as someone else's attempt to destroy you. Marcus still writes sometimes through the prison email system. He's teaching other inmates about finance, he says, claims he's changed. Maybe he has, but his last email caught my attention. I'll be up for parole in 2 years. I've learned so much from my mistake. Maybe you could hire me, give me a chance like I once gave you. I archived the email without responding. Some lessons take longer to learn than others. Marcus taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about trust. He broke that trust, and all the degrees in the world can't repair it. My new fraud detection software launches next month. It's designed to catch exactly the kind of schemes Marcus used to commit. In the end, his attempt to destroy me gave me the knowledge to help others protect themselves. That's a kind of justice even he couldn't steal. The company's annual report came out yesterday. There's a whole section about our new security protocols, complete with a photo of me at my desk. No designer clothes, no fake smile, just the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly what she's worth. Marcus will probably see it in the prison library. I wonder if he'll finally understand that he never gave me a chance. He gave me a target, and I've spent every day since then proving that the best revenge isn't just success. It's success they never saw coming.
I stared at the pristine white tablecloth, counting the delicate blue flowers embroidered along its edge. Anything to avoid looking at my mother-in-law's face as she calmly suggested I kill my unborn daughter. The Bennett name requires a male heir, Alice. Surely you understand that. Judith's voice carried the same tone she used when discussing wine selections or flower arrangements. Modern medicine gives us options. It would be quick, discreet. The roast beef on my plate had turned to ash in my mouth. Mark's hand found mine under the table, but his grip felt weak, uncertain. I pulled away. "You can't be serious," I managed to say, though my throat had gone desert dry. "I've never been more serious." Judith dabbed her lips with her napkin, leaving a perfect coral smudge. "This family has maintained its traditions for 6 generations. We didn't survive 2 world wars and the Great Depression by being sentimental." I looked at Mark then, searching his face for any sign of the man I'd married 2 years ago. The one who'd spun me around our kitchen when we saw the positive pregnancy test, who'd whispered names into my ear late at night. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Mark?" My voice cracked on that single syllable. "Mother has a point about tradition," he mumbled, pushing his peas around his plate. "Maybe we should discuss this privately." The chandelier light caught the crystal wine glasses, throwing prisms across the walls. I watched them dance, remembering how I'd once thought this dining room beautiful rather than suffocating. How I'd believed joining the Bennett family meant security, stability, love. "There's nothing to discuss." I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This conversation is over." "Sit down, Alice." Judith's voice had lost its polite veneer. "You married into this family knowing our values, our expectations. Don't act surprised now." "Values?" I laughed, and it sounded foreign to my ears. "You're talking about murdering my baby because she's not the right gender. That's not values. That's insanity." "Lower your voice," Mark hissed, glancing nervously at the kitchen door where Maria, their housekeeper, might hear. "Why? Afraid someone might realize what kind of family I've married into?" My hands were shaking as I grabbed my purse. "A family that would rather kill an innocent child than break with tradition?" Judith's face hardened. "You're being dramatic. This isn't about murder, it's about legacy, about duty, something you clearly don't understand." "You're right, I don't understand." I backed away from the table, suddenly desperate for air. "And I don't want to." As I turned to leave, Judith's words followed me like poison. "Think carefully about your next move, Alice. The Bennetts protect their own, but we also know how to deal with threats." I stopped at the doorway, my hand on the frame. "Is that a threat, Judith?" "A reminder. You signed a prenuptial agreement. Walk away now, and you leave with nothing." The laugh that burst from me then was ugly, raw. "Nothing? I already have nothing. Just a husband who won't defend his wife and child, and in-laws who think murder is a reasonable dinner conversation." I made it to my car before the tears came, before the magnitude of what had just happened hit me full force. My phone buzzed. Mark calling, probably to smooth things over. to explain away his mother's words as stress or concern or some other pretty lie. I ignored it, starting the engine instead. As I pulled away from the mansion I'd once dreamed of calling home, one thought crystallized in my mind. They wanted to take everything from me, starting with my daughter. Well, two could play that game. By the time I was done, the Bennett family would learn exactly what it meant to lose everything they held dear. 3 missed calls and 12 text messages lit up my phone as I paced our bedroom. Mark's footsteps on the stairs made my skin crawl. I'd been home for an hour, just long enough to pack an overnight bag and grab my important documents. "You're being irrational!" Mark burst through the door, his tie loosened, hair disheveled. Mother didn't mean it the way it sounded. I zipped the bag shut with enough force to break the zipper. "Really? How else should I interpret 'kill your baby'? She's from a different generation. The family name means everything to her." He reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "We can work this out, just sleep on it." Sleep on it? The laugh that escaped me was bitter enough to burn. "Like you slept on telling me about your family's obsession with male heirs? Was that something you planned to mention before or after we got married?" His silence was answer enough. I shouldered my bag, but he blocked the doorway. "Move. Alice, please. You're carrying my child too. Don't I get a say?" "A say?" My voice rose sharply. "You had your say at dinner. You chose your side when you sat there letting your mother plan our daughter's death. That's not fair. You know how mother gets. Sometimes it's easier to what? Let her win? Sacrifice our child to keep the peace?" I stepped closer, searching his face. "Tell me, Mark, what else would you sacrifice to keep Mommy happy?" He flinched. "You don't understand the pressure." "You're right. I don't understand pressure. I just understand that my husband is too weak to protect his own child." The words hit their mark. His face flushed red, then drained of color. "Where are you going?" "Away from here. Away from you. Away from this sick family and its traditions." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist. "You can't leave. Think about what you're throwing away. The lifestyle, the connections, the threats, the manipulation, the casual suggestion of infanticide over dinner." I twisted free. "Let me pass." "Or what?" Something ugly flashed in his eyes. "You signed a prenup, remember? Leave now and you get nothing. No alimony, no property, no—" "Is that what you think I care about? Money?" I shoved past him, but his next words stopped me cold. "Mother's right. You never did understand our world. Maybe this is for the best. Clearly, you're not Bennett material." I turned slowly. "No, I'm not. And thank God for that." My phone buzzed again, Judith's name flashing on the screen. I declined the call, then opened my messages. The latest one made my blood freeze. "Consider carefully, dear. The Bennett family has friends in every hospital within 50 miles. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I took a screenshot, then another of the previous threats she'd sent. My marketing background hadn't been completely wasted as a trophy wife. I knew the value of documentation. "Your mother's threatening me now." I held up the phone. "Want to defend that too?" Mark's face went blank, that practiced, polished mask I'd seen him wear at business meetings. "She's trying to protect our family's interests." "Our family?" I pressed my free hand against my stomach. "This is our family, Mark, right here. But you're too busy being Mommy's good little boy to see it." I made it halfway down the stairs before he called out, "If you leave now, don't bother coming back." I paused, not turning around. "Is that a threat or a promise?" His silence spoke volumes. I reached the front door, then stopped. "You know what the funny thing is? I actually thought you loved me. But you can't love anyone, can you? Not really. You're too busy trying to earn Mommy's approval." The door slammed behind me with satisfying force. In my car, I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through my contacts until I found the one person I could trust. The one person who'd never let me down. "Henry, it's Alice. I need your help." My voice steadied as I spoke. "And I need everything you know about investigative journalism. It's time the world learned what kind of people the Bennetts really are." Henry's apartment smelled like coffee and old books, a familiar comfort I hadn't realized I'd missed. Files and newspaper clippings covered his dining table. 2 years' worth of Bennett family history spread out like a roadmap of corruption. "Look at this!" He pointed to a yellowed article. 3 years ago, Mark's cousin Sarah suddenly moved abroad after getting pregnant. No one's heard from her since. My hands trembled as I picked up the clipping. She was carrying a girl too, wasn't she? According to hospital records, Henry's voice hardened, which mysteriously disappeared a week later. I pushed away from the table, bile rising in my throat. The morning sickness wasn't helping, but this was different. This was horror. Pure and simple. My phone buzzed, Tom Bennett's name flashing on the screen. I almost declined, but something made me answer. Alice, don't hang up. His voice was urgent, stripped of its usual casual drawl. Mother's calling an emergency family meeting. About you. Let me guess. They're planning my tragic accident? This isn't a joke. Papers rustled in the background. I'm in Father's study. There's something you need to see. Files about other women in the family. It's worse than we thought. Henry watched me intently as I gripped the phone tighter. What kind of files? Medical records, legal documents, payoffs. Tom's voice dropped to a whisper. Alice, Sarah wasn't the first. There were others. So many others. A sharp knock echoed through the phone, followed by Judith's muffled voice. Thomas? Are you in there? I have to go. Tom's words tumbled out. Meet me at the Blue Door. Tonight, 8 o'clock. Come alone. The line went dead. Henry touched my shoulder. You're not actually considering going? Of course I am. It's obviously a trap. He gestured at the evidence spread before us. They're desperate. They know you're a threat. Or Tom's finally grown a conscience. I grabbed my coat. Either way, I need to know. Then I'm coming with you. No. I touched his arm. If it is a trap, I need you safe. You're the only one who knows the truth, who can expose them if... My hand drifted to my stomach. If they make you disappear like Sarah? His jaw clenched. All the more reason not to go. I have to know, Henry. For her. I pressed my other hand against my belly. For all of them. The Blue Door was a dive bar on the edge of town. The kind of place the Bennetts would never be caught dead in. Perfect for secrets. Perfect for traps. Tom sat in a corner booth, hands wrapped around an untouched whiskey. When he saw me, his face crumpled. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. All these years I never knew. He slid a USB drive across the table. Everything's here. Bank transfers, medical records, correspondence. Mother's been systematic about it. Any time a first pregnancy wasn't male, there were complications. My fingers closed around the drive. Why are you helping me? Because I remember Sarah. Because I have a girlfriend Mother doesn't know about, and she's pregnant. His hands shook. Because someone needs to stop them. The door chimed. Mark walked in, followed by two men I didn't recognize. Tom's face went ash white. I'm sorry, he breathed. They followed me. I didn't know. I was already moving, but Mark's voice froze me in place. Sit down, Alice. He sounded tired, resigned. Mother was right. You've become a problem that needs solving. The men flanked the exits. Tom wouldn't meet my eyes. I clutched the USB drive, mind racing. There was a back door through the kitchen. I'd spotted it coming in. If I could just... Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Mark stepped closer. Think of it as a kindness. You clearly can't handle the responsibilities of being a Bennett. I laughed then, sharp and bitter. No, Mark. I just can't handle being a murderer. The next few seconds would determine everything. My fate, my daughter's fate, the fate of every future woman unfortunate enough to marry into this family of monsters. I took a deep breath, remembering Henry's words. Sometimes the best revenge is survival. Time to survive. The kitchen's back door slammed behind me as I burst into the alley, my heels skidding on wet pavement. Mark's shouts echoed from inside, followed by the crash of overturned chairs. The USB drive burned in my pocket like a live coal. A black SUV idled at the alley's entrance. Behind me, the door banged open again. I ran the opposite direction, ducking between dumpsters, my pregnant body protesting every jarring step. Another SUV appeared at the far end, headlights blazing. My phone buzzed. Henry's message flashed. Got your location, 2 minutes away. Hold on. A hand grabbed my arm. I spun, ready to fight, but it was Tom. Fire escape, he hissed, pointing up. 3rd floor's empty. I'll stall them. I didn't waste time questioning his loyalty. The metal rattled under my feet as I climbed, Mark's voice carrying from below. Find her! Mother wants this handled tonight! Through a grimy window, I made out an abandoned office space. The lock was old, weak. One sharp blow with my elbow and I was inside, glass tinkling behind me. My phone lit up again. Henry calling. I answered in a whisper. Where are you? Northeast corner, blue Honda. They've got the building surrounded, Alice. What's on that drive that's worth killing for? Everything. I peered down at the alley. 4 men now, plus Mark, spreading out like hunters. Their whole sick history. Tom said, Tom, Henry's voice sharpened. Alice, he's working with them. I just saw him get into Judith's car. The betrayal shouldn't have hurt. I barely knew Tom, but it did. Another Bennett choosing family over conscience. Footsteps on the fire escape. I moved deeper into the shadows, past empty desks and forgotten filing cabinets. A door at the far end probably led to a hallway, maybe stairs. If I could just... It's over, Alice. Mark stood in the broken window, silhouetted against streetlights. He looked different, dangerous in a way I'd never seen before. Was any of it real? My voice stayed steady despite my racing heart. Us? Our marriage? Or was I just a breeding mare for the Bennett bloodline? I loved you. He stepped inside. Still do, but family is everything. You'll understand that soon, when you're a mother. If you let me live that long. That's up to you. Another step closer. Give me the drive, come home. We'll say you were emotional, confused. Mother will forgive you, eventually. Like she forgave Sarah? He flinched. Sarah made her choice. Did she? Or did your mother's friends make it for her? Sirens wailed in the distance. Mark's face hardened. Last chance, Alice. The drive or what? I backed toward the door. You'll add me to the Bennett family's list of tragic accidents? How many are there, Mark? How many women did your mother murder for having the wrong kind of baby? Shut up! He lunged forward. I threw the nearest object, a dusty desk lamp, and ran. The hallway stretched endless and dark, my footsteps echoing. Behind me, Mark's pursuit was silent, methodical. He knew he had me trapped. My phone vibrated. Henry again. Police are 2 minutes out. Keep moving. The stairwell door appeared ahead. I grabbed the handle. Locked. It's done, Alice. Mark's voice came from the darkness. No more running. I turned, pressing my back against the door. You're right. No more running. His outline emerged from the shadows, one hand extended. The drive. Now. You want it? I pulled it from my pocket. Come get it. He approached slowly, cautiously, like I was a cornered animal. In a way I was. But cornered animals are the most dangerous. I trusted you, I whispered. I loved you. I know. His fingers closed around the drive. I'm sorry it has to end this way. So am I. The taser from my other pocket connected with his ribs before he could react. Henry had insisted I take it. Just in case. As Mark convulsed and collapsed, I heard doors bursting open below, voices shouting, footsteps thundering upstairs. I looked down at my husband's unconscious form and felt nothing but cold determination. The real drive was safe with Henry. This one contained something else. Something that would ensure the Bennett family's destruction, one way or another. The truth has a way of surviving, even in the dark. The police interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. Detective Rivera set another coffee in front of me, her face carefully neutral. Mrs. Bennett, we found 3 bodies in the Bennett family crypt. All female, all pregnant when they died. She slid photographs across the table. Your husband's been released on bail. His mother's lawyers are already spinning this as ancient family history. My fingers traced the edge of one photo, a gold bracelet on a skeletal wrist. Sarah wore one just like this. We know. Rivera leaned forward. But without more evidence linking current family members to these deaths, this stays a cold case. The door opened. Henry burst in, ignoring the detective's protest. They're moving against you, now. What? Mark just filed for emergency custody of your unborn child, claiming you're mentally unstable. They've got 3 psychiatrists ready to testify. He dropped a legal document on the table. Judith's judge friends are expediting it. You've got 24 hours. The room tilted. I pressed my hand against my stomach, feeling my daughter kick. They can't. They can. Rivera's voice hardened. And they will unless I give them something bigger. I met Henry's eyes. The drive? Ready to go? But Alice? This isn't just about exposing old crimes anymore. The moment this goes public, they'll destroy you. They're already trying to destroy me. I stood, steadier than I felt. Time to return the favor. My phone buzzed. Tom's number. After his betrayal at the bar, I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. Don't trust the police. His voice was barely a whisper. Mother's got people everywhere. But I found something. Father's real will. The one mother suppressed. It changes everything. Why should I believe you? Because I just found out my girlfriend lost our baby. Mother's friends at the hospital. His voice broke. Meet me at St. Michael's. 1 hour. I looked at Henry, who shook his head. It's another trap. Maybe, I gathered my coat. Or maybe it's exactly what we need. St. Michael's loomed against the darkening sky, its Gothic spires perfect for a family of monsters. Tom waited by the side entrance, looking haunted. Inside, he held the door. The will's hidden in Father's old office. It proves Mother killed him when he threatened to expose her. We climbed dusty stairs to the church offices. Tom's hands shook as he unlocked a door. It's in here somewhere. I saw Mother hide. The door slammed behind us. Judith stepped from the shadows, Mark beside her. Oh, Thomas, she sighed. Still so easily manipulated. Just like your father. Tom's face crumpled. I'm sorry, Alice. They have Rachel, my girlfriend. They said, enough. Judith's voice could have frozen hell. Alice, dear, you've become quite troublesome. But we're willing to be merciful. Sign these papers. She produced a document. Full custody to Mark, a generous settlement and a non-disclosure agreement. Walk away, live a comfortable life. And my daughter? Will be raised properly, as a Bennett should be. You mean if she survives birth? The words tasted like acid. How many girls have you murdered, Judith? How many families have you destroyed? I've preserved this family's legacy. Her eyes glittered. Something you never understood. You're right. I backed toward the window, phone recording in my pocket. I never understood how anyone could kill innocent children for power. But now I do. You're not preserving anything. You're just a murderer hiding behind tradition. Mark stepped forward. Alice, please, don't make this harder. Then what? Killing me? Like you killed Sarah? Like you killed all the others? We did what was necessary. Judith's mask cracked, revealing the monster beneath. And we'll do what's necessary now. Perfect. Her confession, recorded. I pressed send on the phone, delivering everything to Henry and Detective Rivera. Now I just had to survive the next few minutes. You know what's funny? I smiled, feeling strangely calm. You were so focused on preserving the Bennett name, you never noticed what I was really doing. Judith's eyes narrowed. What? Destroying it, completely. And you just helped me finish the job. Sirens wailed in the distance. Judith's face contorted with rage as she realized what I'd done. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just surviving. It's making sure your enemies destroy themselves. The Bennett family's annual charity gala buzzed with wealth and whispers. From my corner of the ballroom, I watched Judith work the crowd, her perfectly coiffed hair catching the chandelier light. Mark stood beside her, playing the dutiful son, while photographers captured their generous donations to children's hospitals. The irony made me sick. You shouldn't be here. Henry appeared at my elbow, tension radiating from him. The restraining order doesn't start until midnight. I adjusted my dress over my 7-month belly. Plenty of time to deliver their surprise. Alice, his hand touched my arm. They've already frozen your accounts, hired lawyers to paint you as unstable. If you do this, they'll what? Destroy me? Kill me? I watched Judith laugh at someone's joke. They're already trying. At least this way, I take them down with me. The USB drive felt heavy in my clutch. 1 copy to the press, 1 to the police, 1 to every major shareholder in the Bennett empire. All set to send at exactly 9 p.m. when Judith would take the stage for her annual speech about family values. Tom approached, Rachel clinging to his arm like a shield. Mother's looking for you. Good. I stepped forward, but Henry caught my wrist. Wait. His voice dropped. Something's wrong. Security's moving. I scanned the room. He was right. Men in dark suits were positioning themselves near the exits. Did you really think we wouldn't be watching? Mark's voice came from behind me. Checking every guest list? Monitoring every invitation? I turned. His face held something almost like regret. "The drives are already uploaded," I said. "Set to auto-send." "No, they're not!" He pulled out his phone, showing an email from my account. "Amazing what a court order can do. Your devices, your cloud storage, all accessed and cleared. Mother's very thorough." The room spun slightly. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Judith glided over, her smile razor sharp. "Did you think you were the first to try exposing us? That others haven't attempted exactly what you planned? The evidence has been contained?" She gestured subtly. Security moved closer. "Just like you will be. The private psychiatric facility is quite comfortable, I'm told. Perfect for a troubled mother-to-be." My hand pressed against my stomach. The baby kicked as if sensing my fear. "You can't just make me disappear." "Of course we can." Judith's voice dripped false concern. "A tragic case of postpartum psychosis. These things happen, especially to women under stress. Mark will have full custody naturally. For the child's safety." Henry stepped forward. "I won't let—" "Mr. Mitchell," Judith cut him off. "Your newspaper has been informed of your inappropriate relationship with a married, mentally unstable woman. I suggest you leave while you still have a career." The trap had sprung perfectly. Every angle covered, every escape route blocked. I thought I was so clever, but they'd been 10 steps ahead. "Why not just kill me?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "Like the others?" "Because this is better." Mark touched my cheek, an obscene parody of tenderness. "You'll live, knowing our daughter is being raised properly, as a Bennett should be. Knowing you failed to protect her." The room blurred. My knees weakened, but I refused to fall. "Not here. Not in front of them." "Security will escort you out quietly," Judith said. "Unless you prefer a scene? Though that would only reinforce the unfortunate narrative about your mental state." I looked around the glittering ballroom, at the wealthy guests who'd turn away, pretending not to see. At Tham, who couldn't meet my eyes. At Henry, desperate but powerless. Everything I'd planned, every piece of evidence I'd gathered, every ally I'd thought I had, all stripped away in minutes. They'd won. They'd always been winning, and I'd just been playing their game by their rules. But as security approached, something crystallized in my mind. A terrible, desperate clarity. They'd taken everything from me. My marriage, my future, my freedom, and soon, my child. I had nothing left to lose. And people with nothing left to lose make the most dangerous enemies of all. I smiled at Judith, watching uncertainty flicker across her perfect face. The game wasn't over. It was just changing rules. The security guards never saw the flash drive I'd slipped to Rachel during our staged confrontation. While they escorted me toward the exit, she disappeared into the crowd, carrying the real evidence, not the decoy Judith had found. I counted steps. 3, 2, 1. The ballroom's lights cut out. In the sudden darkness, screams erupted, followed by the massive screens behind the stage flickering to life. Sarah's face appeared, young and beautiful, in her last known photograph. "What is this?" Judith's voice cut through the chaos. "Get those screens off!" But more faces appeared. Janet Bennett, 1982. Elizabeth Bennett, 1995. Each with their death dates, their medical records, their accidents detailed in clinical precision. "Security!" Mark's shout echoed. "Get her out!" I wouldn't. Tom's voice rang clear. He stood by the main doors, Rachel beside him, her phone live-streaming everything. "The footage is already going viral. Every news outlet in the country just received copies." The lights flickered back on. Judith stood frozen, her perfect mask cracking as she watched her carefully constructed world implode. "You." She turned to me, fury distorting her features. "You orchestrated this." "No, Judith." I stepped forward, shrugging off the guards. "You did. Every murder, every cover-up, every threat. I just exposed it." The crowd pressed back, creating a circle around us. Phones recorded everything. The Bennett family's darkest secrets laid bare for all to see. "These are lies." Mark pushed through the crowd. "Fabrications from a disturbed—" "Tell that to Sarah's parents." Tom's voice cracked. "Tell that to Rachel, whose miscarriage was no accident. Tell that to every woman whose life you destroyed." "Thomas," Judith's voice turned silk smooth. "Think about what you're doing to this family." "Family?" He laughed bitterly. "You killed my daughter too, Mother. Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? Rachel's complications happened right after I told you she was pregnant." The crowd gasped. Mark's face went ash white. Mother? His whisper carried in the silent room. Is it true? Everything I did was to protect this family. Judith's chin lifted. To preserve our legacy. You're all too weak to understand. Weak. I stepped closer. You murdered innocent women and children because you couldn't bear the thought of losing control. That's not strength, Judith. That's cowardice. She moved faster than I expected. The gun appeared in her hand, aimed at my stomach. I won't let you destroy everything I've built. The crowd scattered. Security reached for weapons, but froze at her wild-eyed stare. Mother, don't! Mark's voice shook. Please! Still trying to play both sides, Mark? I kept my eyes on Judith. Still can't choose between your wife and your mother? Shut up! Judith's hand trembled. You never understood. The Bennett name means something. We protect our own. By killing them? Tom moved closer. By murdering our children? They were weak. Imperfect. I made the hard choices to keep this family strong. No. Mark's voice changed, hardened. You made the choices that kept you in power. He stepped between me and the gun. What are you doing? Judith whispered. Choosing. He didn't look back at me. Finally choosing. You would betray your own mother? For her? No. His voice stayed steady. For my daughter. For every child you murdered in the name of family. The gun wavered. In that moment of hesitation, security rushed forward. The weapon clattered to the floor as Judith screamed, not in fear or anger, but in the primal rage of someone watching their kingdom crumble. Detective Rivera emerged from the crowd, badge displayed. Judith Bennett, you're under arrest! As they led her away, her perfectly coiffed hair now disheveled, her makeup streaked with tears, she looked smaller, ordinary. Just another monster finally exposed to the light. Mark turned to me, his face haunted. Alice, don't. I stepped back. You don't get forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He nodded, understanding at last. The Bennett legacy was ending. Not with a bang, but with the quiet click of handcuffs and the whir of cameras, documenting every moment of their fall. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's making sure the truth survives with you. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should in September. I watched Judith being led away in handcuffs, her designer suit replaced by prison orange, her perfect posture finally broken. The jury had taken less than 2 hours to reach their verdict. Guilty. On all counts. Mrs. Bennett? A young woman approached, clutching a photo. I'm Sarah's sister. My throat tightened. I have her bracelet. The police released it after. Keep it, she touched my arm. For your daughter, so she'll know what you fought for. As she walked away, I felt my baby kick. 7 months along now, and every movement reminded me why I'd torn down an empire. Mark waited by his car, watching me. He'd testified against his mother, helping secure the conviction, but some betrayals can't be undone. Some choices mark us forever. Alice, he stepped forward. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. You're right. You don't. I met his eyes. But she deserves a father who's trying to be better. Understanding flickered across his face. You mean supervised visits after she's born, if you continue therapy and prove you've changed? He nodded, relief and regret warring in his expression. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I turned away. You have a lifetime of choices ahead to prove you're not your mother's son. Tom and Rachel waited nearby, hands clasped. Their loss had sparked their testimony, helping bring down the family that had stolen their child. They'd moved to Seattle last week, starting fresh. Ready? Henry appeared beside me, carrying my briefcase. He'd never left, never wavered, even when the Bennett lawyers tried destroying his career. Almost. I walked to the courthouse garden, where a small memorial now stood. Names etched in stone. All the women and children the Bennett family had sacrificed for their legacy. Sarah, Janet, Elizabeth, Tom and Rachel's unnamed daughter. I placed my hand on the cool marble, feeling the engraved letters beneath my fingers. You won. Henry's voice was soft. They can't hurt anyone else. No, I straightened up. But that's not why I did it. Why then? I touched my stomach, feeling my daughter's response. Because someone had to show them that legacy isn't about names or traditions or power. It's about the choices we make, The people we protect. He stepped closer, his hand hovering near mine. And what choices will you make now? The question hung between us, heavy with unspoken possibilities. I'd seen the way he looked at me, the love he'd kept hidden all these years. Patient, unwavering, asking nothing in return. I don't know yet, I met his gaze. But I know I want to make them freely. No more chains, no more traditions controlling my future. Sounds lonely. No. I took his hand, feeling its warmth. Not lonely, just undefined, unwritten. The setting sun painted the courthouse gold. Like nature herself was turning the page. The Bennett legacy was ended, their empire dismantled, their secrets exposed. I realized revenge hadn't been the answer I thought it was. The answer was in breaking free, in choosing your own path, your own family, your own definition of legacy. Come on, I squeezed his hand. Let's go home. Your place or mine? His smile held no pressure, no expectations. Neither? I looked toward the horizon. Let's find somewhere new, somewhere we can write our own story. My daughter kicked again, stronger this time. She'd never know the weight of the Bennett name, the poison of their traditions. She'd be free to choose her own path, make her own mistakes, create her own legacy. And maybe that was the greatest revenge of all, not in destroying the old, but in building something new, something better, something free.
The text appeared on my phone like a digital slap across the face. I need to tell you something. Don't wait up tonight. 7 words. That's all it took to make my hand shake, my coffee mug clattering against the kitchen counter. I've been married to Tyler long enough to know when something's wrong. 8 years of sharing a life teaches you to read between the lines, to sense the tremors before the earthquake hits. I stared at those words until they blurred, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What do you say to a message that reeks of goodbye? Is everything okay? I typed, deleted, typed again. Pathetic. Of course nothing was okay. The house felt different suddenly. Too quiet, too empty. Our wedding photos on the wall seemed to mock me. Tyler's perfect smile, his arm around my waist, both of us radiating happiness. What a joke. My phone buzzed again. Margaret knows. She'll explain everything. Margaret. Of course his mother would be involved. She'd never approved of me, always finding subtle ways to remind me that I wasn't good enough for her precious son. Too focused on my writing, not ready for children, not from the right social circle. I called Ben immediately. Something's wrong, I said when he picked up. Tyler's acting strange, and apparently Margaret has all the answers. Heaven! Ben's lawyer voice kicked in, calm and measured. Don't jump to conclusions. Want me to come over? No, I need to handle this myself. The doorbell rang, making me flinch. Through the frosted glass, I could see Margaret's silhouette, straight-backed and proper as always. I opened the door, noting her perfectly pressed clothes, her immaculate makeup. She looked like she was attending a business meeting, not destroying someone's life. Heaven, dear! Her smile didn't reach her eyes. May I come in? I stepped aside, watching her glide into my living room like she owned it. She probably thought she did. I assume Tyler has messaged you? She perched on the edge of our sofa, her designer handbag placed precisely beside her. Cut the act, Margaret. What's going on? She sighed, a sound full of practiced sympathy. Tyler's found someone else. Someone more suitable. Her name is Clara. I introduced them at the charity gala last month. The words hit like bullets, each one finding its mark. Last month. The gala I couldn't attend because I was at my writing workshop, the one Margaret had insisted Tyler attend alone. You planned this. The realization came with crystal clarity. I merely facilitated an inevitable outcome. Margaret's voice turned steel cold. Let's be honest, Heaven. You were never going to give Tyler what he needs, what our family needs. Clara understands the importance of legacy. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised us both. Legacy? You mean she's young and fertile, unlike your broken daughter-in-law? Don't be crude. Margaret stood, smoothing her skirt. Tyler will be filing for divorce. I suggest you make this easy on everyone and accept it gracefully. Gracefully? My voice shook. Like you gracefully orchestrated my husband's affair? Oh, heaven. She reached for her bag, looking almost pitying. Did you really think this marriage would last? You were never one of us. Tyler needs someone who can give him children, who understands our world. Clara is perfect for him. I watched her walk to the door, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors we'd picked out together. Tyler and I, planning for a future that was now turning to ash. Margaret, I called after her. She paused, hand on the doorknob. Tell Tyler something for me? She turned, eyebrow raised. Tell him I hope Clara gives him everything he wants. I smiled, feeling something hard and cold settle in my chest. And tell him I'll see him in court. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving me alone in a house full of memories that suddenly felt like lies. My phone buzzed again. Tyler, probably with more excuses, more explanations. I didn't read it. Instead, I opened my laptop and started typing. Not another chapter of my novel, but something else entirely. Something that would make them all pay. Tyler came home at midnight, reeking of expensive perfume and guilt. I sat in the dark living room, my laptop still open to the document that would destroy him. He flipped on the lights and jumped. Jesus, heaven, what are you doing sitting in the dark? Waiting for my husband to come home and tell me about Clara. The name felt like poison on my tongue. Or were you planning to let your mother do all your dirty work? He loosened his tie, a nervous gesture I'd once found endearing. So she told you. She did more than tell me, she gloated. I closed my laptop with a snap. How long have you been planning this? It's not what you think. Tyler paced the room, keeping his distance. Clara and I... It just happened. We connected. At the gala, your mother insisted I skip? My laugh sounded hollow. The one she practically pushed you to attend? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Mother had nothing to do with... Stop lying. I stood up, my legs steadier than I expected. She orchestrated the whole thing, found the perfect breeding mare for her precious son. Don't be crude. His words echoed his mother's, making my skin crawl. This isn't about having children. No? I moved closer, watching him retreat. Then why did your mother spend 20 minutes explaining how Clara understands the importance of family legacy? Tyler's face hardened. Maybe she has a point. We've been trying for years, Heaven. Years of disappointment, of watching you pour yourself into your writing instead of... Instead of what? My voice rose. Instead of being the perfect society wife? Instead of attending your mother's charity functions and playing hostess to her friends? That's not fair. Fair? I grabbed my phone, pulling up the photos I'd found earlier. Was it fair when you and Clara spent Valentine's Day together while I was at my fertility appointment? Was it fair when your mother introduced her to your entire family at Easter, knowing what you were planning? His eyes widened at the photos. You've been spying on me? No, Tyler. Your mother's friends aren't as discreet as she thinks. They've been sending me sympathetic messages all day, complete with evidence of your indiscretions. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. I never meant to hurt you. That's the problem, isn't it? I moved toward the stairs. You never meant anything. You just let your mother puppet master our entire marriage. Where are you going? To pack. I paused on the first step. Unless you'd prefer to leave? After all, Clara's probably waiting up for you. Heaven, please. We can talk about this. Like you talked to me before starting an affair? Or like you talked to me before letting your mother plan my replacement? His silence was answer enough. I climbed the stairs, each step feeling like a victory. Behind me, I heard him on the phone. Mother? She knows everything. No, I don't think she'll be reasonable about this. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I opened my laptop again. The document was still there, waiting. I'd titled it, The Perfect Son, a story about a wealthy family's golden boy and his controlling mother. Fiction, of course, with just enough truth to make them squirm. My phone buzzed with a text from Ben. How are you holding up? I typed back. Starting chapter 2, it's going to be a bestseller. Below, I could hear Tyler still talking to Margaret, their voices rising. Let them plot. Let them scheme. They thought they were breaking me, but they were just giving me material. Another text came through, this time from an unknown number. Heaven, this is Clara. We need to talk. I stared at the message, a smile spreading across my face. Perfect. Every story needs an unexpected ally, and Clara might just be mine. After all, she'd seen Margaret's manipulation up close. Maybe it was time she learned what happened to Margaret's last daughter-in-law. I saved my document and started a new message to Clara. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold, it's published in hardcover. I met Clara at a small cafe 3 blocks from my house, far enough from Tyler's usual haunts to avoid detection. She sat in a corner booth, perfectly put together in that effortless way that probably took hours to achieve. Just Margaret's type. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, fingers wrapped around an untouched latte. "I know this must be difficult." Difficult? I slid into the booth. That's one word for it. Betrayal might be another. Clara flinched. "I didn't know about you at first. Margaret told me Tyler was separated, going through a divorce." "Of course she did." I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the Easter photos. "Is that why you're wearing my grandmother's sapphire necklace here?" Her hand flew to her throat, though the necklace was long gone. "Margaret gave it to me, said it was a family heirloom." "Ah, it was. My grandmother gave it to me on my wedding day." I zoomed in on the image. Notice how Margaret's smiling? That's her victory face. Heaven, Save it! I set my phone down. "You didn't ask me here to apologize." Clara reached into her designer bag, pulling out a stack of letters. "No, I didn't. I asked you here because you need to see these." The letters were expensive stationery, Margaret's flowing script unmistakable. I started reading, each word making my stomach turn. Plans, carefully laid out over months. Instructions for Clara on how to dress, what to say, when to laugh at Tyler's jokes. Details about his schedule, his preferences, his weaknesses. "She's been grooming me," Clara's voice cracked, like some kind of replacement part. "That's Margaret's specialty," I kept reading. "She did the same thing with Tyler's first wife." Clara's head snapped up. "First wife?" "Sarah." I met her eyes. "Lasted 11 months before she had a convenient mental breakdown. Margaret had her committed. The divorce was quick, quiet, and very generous, provided Sarah never contacted Tyler again." Oh, God. Clara's latte was definitely cold now. "There's more. Margaret. She has expectations. About children. About my role in the family business." "Let me guess. She's already planned the nursery?" "And the prep schools. The college applications. The whole future mapped out before I'm even pregnant." Clara's perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms. "I thought I was in control, you know? Playing the game. But she's been playing me all along." I gathered the letters, scanning the dates. "These go back 8 months, well before the gala." "She approached me at a charity auction, said her son needed someone suitable." Clara laughed bitterly. "I thought she meant socially. I didn't realize she was casting for a specific role." My phone buzzed, Tyler calling again. I declined it, watching another text pop up. "Where are you? Mother's worried." "Does Tyler know?" I asked Clara. "About the letters?" "Tyler only knows what Margaret tells him." She pulled out one more envelope. "This arrived yesterday. My script for the next 6 months, including when to announce the pregnancy." "But you're not." "No." Clara's smile was sharp. "And I won't be. That's why I needed to see you. I'm done being Margaret's puppet, but I need help making sure I don't end up like Sarah." I studied her face, looking for deception. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I have something Margaret wants to keep hidden." Clara tapped the envelope. "Something that could ruin more than just her perfect family image." My phone buzzed again, Ben this time. "Margaret's looking for you. Be careful." I gathered the letters, mind racing. Clara could be lying, setting another trap, but the fear in her eyes seemed real enough. And if she had proof of Margaret's schemes, meet me tomorrow, I said, standing. Bring whatever evidence you have. And Clara, if you're playing me, remember, I'm not Sarah. I don't break easily. She nodded, understanding the threat. Tomorrow then. And heaven? I really am sorry. I left her there, letters tucked safely in my bag. Outside, the spring air felt electric with possibility. Margaret had made one crucial mistake. She'd chosen a replacement who was just as ambitious as she was. And now that replacement was ready to switch sides. My phone buzzed one more time, Margaret herself. We need to discuss your behavior, dear. Come to dinner tonight. I smiled, typing back. Of course, Mother. I have so much to share. Margaret's dining room felt like a stage set. Crystal glasses catching the chandelier light, silver gleaming on starched linen. Everything arranged just so, a perfect tableau of family power. Tyler sat at his usual place, Clara beside him, both looking anywhere but at me. Heaven, darling! Margaret gestured to my old seat. I'm so glad you could join us. I remained standing, Clara's letters burning a hole in my bag. Interesting seating arrangement. Well, Margaret's smile tightened. We need to discuss the new dynamics. The dynamics where you orchestrated my replacement? I pulled out one of Clara's letters. Or the dynamics where you plan to announce her pregnancy next month? Tyler's head snapped up. What pregnancy? The one your mother scheduled, Clara said quietly. Along with the birth announcement, the christening, and probably the child's first word. Margaret's knife clattered against fine china. Clara, dear, you're obviously confused. Show him the letters, I told Clara. Show him how his mother picked out his new wife like she was casting a play. Clara reached for her bag, but Margaret cut in. That's quite enough. Heaven, you're clearly upset, but this theatrical display. Theatrical? I laughed. Like the performance you arranged at the gala? Or maybe like Sarah's convenient breakdown? The room went silent. Tyler's face drained of color. How do you know about Sarah? I did some digging. I met Margaret's steel gaze. Found some interesting court records. Seems your mother has a pattern. Mother? Tyler turned to Margaret. What is she talking about? Margaret dabbed her lips with a napkin. Ancient history. Your first marriage was a youthful mistake. That you corrected, I cut in, with a carefully planned replacement, just like now. Clara stood suddenly, chair scraping against hardwood. I can't do this anymore. She pulled out her own stack of letters. Tyler, you need to read these. All of them. Margaret rose, authority crackling around her like static. Clara, remember our discussion about your future in this family. My future? Clara's laugh held an edge of hysteria. You mean the one you've scripted down to the minute? The one where I'm just another prop in your perfect family portrait? Tyler grabbed the letters, starting to read. With each page, his hands shook more violently. You planned all of this? He looked at his mother. The gala, the chance meetings, everything? I did what was necessary, Margaret said. Heaven couldn't give you children. Clara can. It's that simple. Simple? I moved closer to Margaret. Like it was simple to have Sarah committed? To convince Tyler she was unstable? Sarah was unstable, Margaret snapped. Just like you're being unstable now. No, Clara interrupted. She's being honest. Something this family should try sometime. Tyler stood, letters crushed in his fist. I need some air. Tyler, wait! Margaret reached for him, but he jerked away. Don't! He looked at each of us in turn. Just don't! The front door slammed behind him, leaving silence in its wake. Well, Margaret smoothed her skirt, composure cracking slightly. I hope you're all satisfied with tonight's drama. Drama? I pulled out my phone, showing her the screen. This isn't drama, Margaret. This is evidence. Every letter, every manipulation, every scheme, all documented. Ready to share with the family lawyers, the society papers, everyone. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I gathered my things. Oh, and Clara? Ben's waiting outside if you need a ride. He's quite good at handling delicate legal situations. Clara nodded, collecting her bag. Thank you. Margaret watched us head for the door, her perfect world crumbling around her. Heaven! She called after me. What do you want? I turned back, seeing fear in her eyes for the first time. Want? I want you to remember this moment, Margaret. The moment you realized you don't control everything. The moment your perfect plan fell apart. Outside, Ben's car idled in the driveway. Clara hesitated before getting in. Are you sure about this? She asked. I looked back at Margaret's house, at the shadows moving behind curtained windows. No, but I'm sure about one thing. We're done being pawns in her game. Ben's office felt like a war room, papers spread across his desk, photos and timelines pinned to a corkboard. Clara sat beside me, her designer outfit wrinkled from hours of planning. Sarah's medical records lay open between us, a stark reminder of what Margaret was capable of. She'll come after you both, Ben said, tapping Sarah's file. She's already laying the groundwork. 3 calls today about Heaven's unstable behavior at dinner. Of course she is! I traced the signature on Sarah's commitment papers. History repeating itself. Clara's phone buzzed. Tyler again. She silenced it without looking. He's been texting all night. Wants to meet, to explain. Don't! Ben's voice hardened. Not without witnesses. Margaret's too smart to leave loose ends. A knock at the door made us all jump. Ben's assistant entered, looking worried. Ms. Rivers, there's someone here to see you. Says she's Sarah Mitchell. The room went silent. Clara's face paled. Sarah's here? Send her in, I said before Ben could object. Sarah wasn't what I expected. No broken woman, no tragic victim. She walked in like someone who'd rebuilt herself from scratch, elegant and sharp-edged. So? She surveyed our evidence wall. Margaret's at it again. You knew? Clara asked. I suspected, when I saw the engagement announcement. Sarah picked up her own medical file. Let me guess. She's already started the whisper campaign? Little comments about emotional stability, about handling stress? I nodded, watching her carefully. Why are you here? Because Tyler called me. She sat down, crossing her legs. First time in 7 years. He's finally asking questions about what really happened. And what did happen? Clara leaned forward. Margaret happened. She orchestrated everything. The doctors, the diagnosis, the treatment. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. The papers were signed, the story was set. Ben grabbed a legal pad. Would you testify to that? No. Sarah's smile was razor sharp. I'll do better. I'll give you Margaret's playbook. Every move, every manipulation, documented in detail, including what she's planning next. My manuscript page glowed on my laptop screen, waiting. How do you know what she's planning? Because I've spent 7 years studying her, tracking her patterns, and because she just tried to contact me, offering a very generous payment to confirm your instability. Clara's phone buzzed again. Margaret this time. The text preview made her gasp. Darling, let's discuss your future. Tyler's not the only son with prospects. She's trying to trade me to Tyler's brother, Clara whispered. Like I'm some sort of investment. That's exactly what you are to her. Sarah stood, smoothing her skirt. What we all were. Pieces in her perfect family puzzle. So help us stop her, I said. Better. Sarah pulled out a USB drive. Help me destroy her. Everything's here. Financial records, medical conspiracies, 7 years of evidence. Margaret's not just manipulative, she's criminal, and it's time everyone knew. Ben took the drive, lawyer mode engaged. This could get ugly. It's already ugly, I said, thinking of my manuscript, of the story taking shape. But now we have something Margaret doesn't. What's that? Clara asked. The truth, all of it, and a platform to tell it. I opened my laptop, creating a new folder. The Margaret Chronicles. Sarah watched me type, understanding dawning. A book? Better. A series of exposés, released piece by piece. Let her try to discredit all of us at once. Ben's phone chimed. A message from Tyler. We need to talk. About Mother. About everything. Careful, Sarah warned. Tyler's not as innocent as he seems. No, I agreed, thinking of all the times he must have known, must have seen, must have chosen to ignore. But he's about to learn something important. What's that? Clara asked. I looked at our wall of evidence, at Sarah's strength, at Clara's determination, at my own reflection in the window, no longer broken, but sharp enough to cut. That his mother isn't the only one who knows how to orchestrate a perfect ending. The annual Rivers Family Gala buzzed with whispers and sideways glances. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, watching Margaret hold court near the champagne fountain, Tyler hovering uncertainly at her side. No Clara in sight, smart girl. Are you sure about this? Ben murmured, appearing at my elbow with a USB drive. Once we start, there's no going back. I took the drive, feeling its weight like a loaded gun. Sarah's in position? Ready with the slideshow, just waiting for your signal. Margaret caught my eye across the room, her smile razor sharp. She raised her glass in mock toast, so confident in her control. She hadn't noticed the tech crew setting up the projector, hadn't seen Sarah slip in through the service entrance. Heaven! Tyler's voice behind me. We need to talk. No, I turned to face him. We need to listen. Everyone needs to listen. The lights dimmed, right on cue. Margaret's voice carried across the suddenly quiet room. Heaven, darling, what are you— The first image hit the wall. Margaret's handwritten instructions to Clara, complete with a schedule for the affair. Then, Sarah's medical records, the falsified diagnoses, financial documents showing payments to doctors, to lawyers, to silence anyone who threatened her perfect family facade. What is this? Tyler grabbed my arm. Stop it, now! Why? I jerked away. Afraid everyone will see who you really are? Who she made you? Margaret moved toward the projector, but Sarah stepped out, blocking her path. Hello, Margaret. Remember me? The room erupted in gasps as Sarah's commitment papers appeared on screen, Margaret's signature stark against white paper. This is slander, Margaret announced, but her voice shook. These documents are clearly fabricated. Like you fabricated my mental illness? Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. Like you fabricated Heaven's instability? Clara's sudden appearance in Tyler's life? Tyler, Margaret turned to her son, handle this. But Tyler stood frozen, watching years of manipulation unspool in high definition. His mother's letters, his father's silence, his own willing blindness, all exposed. Then came the audio. Margaret's voice, crystal clear. Clara, dear, once we handle Heaven like we handled Sarah, everything will fall into place. Tyler always does what's best for the family. The room went dead silent. I felt Tyler's stare like a physical weight. You recorded her? He whispered. No. Clara's voice rang out as she emerged from the crowd. I did. Every meeting, every instruction, every threat. Margaret's composure cracked. You ungrateful little— What? Clara moved to stand beside me. Ungrateful for being groomed as a replacement? For being traded between your sons like a stock option? I gave you everything. You gave me a script, Clara spat. Just like you gave Tyler a script. Just like you gave everyone a script. The projector clicked to the final image. Margaret's letter to Sarah's doctors, detailing exactly how to break someone without leaving evidence. Enough! Tyler's voice sounded strange, hollow. Mother, what did you do? Margaret straightened, ice replacing panic. What I had to do, for this family, for you. For me? Tyler laughed, an ugly sound. You destroyed lives for me? I built lives, Margaret snapped. I created perfection. Everything I did was a lie. I stepped forward, facing her directly. Every moment, every relationship, every perfect family photo, all lies. The room spun with shocked faces, whispered conversations, phones recording everything. Margaret's carefully constructed world crumbling in real time. Then she smiled. That same calculating smile I'd seen so many times before. You think this changes anything? You think anyone will believe the ravings of 2 discarded wives and an ambitious little climber? No, I said quietly. But they'll believe this. I held up my phone, showing her the manuscript title, The Margaret Chronicles, a true story of power, manipulation, and justice. The first chapter goes live tonight, Sarah added. Every major publisher's already bidding. Margaret's face went white. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. And in that moment, watching her perfect world shatter, I felt nothing but emptiness. This wasn't victory. This wasn't even revenge. This was just truth, finally breaking free. The aftermath of the gala exploded across social media, Margaret's carefully crafted empire crumbling in real time. I sat in Ben's office, watching the views on my manuscript excerpt climb into the millions, when Tyler walked in unannounced. "She's in the hospital," he said, looking haunted. "Mother had a breakdown after the gala." "Real or staged?" Sarah's voice cut through the room as she emerged from Ben's private office. "Because we've seen this performance before." Tyler flinched. "Sarah, Save it." She tossed a folder onto Ben's desk. "Your mother's already trying to spin this. Called 3 journalists claiming heaven, and I conspired to destroy her family out of jealousy." "Of course she did." Clara appeared in the doorway, her designer outfit replaced by jeans and a simple blouse. "She just called me, offering to double my trust fund if I publicly discredit heaven." Tyler sank into a chair. "This has to stop." "It will," I said, opening my laptop. "When the truth comes out, all of it." "The truth?" He laughed bitterly. "Which version? The one where my mother orchestrated everything? Or the one where I let her?" The room went silent. Clara's breath caught. Sarah leaned forward. "Say that again," Ben said quietly, recording app open. "I knew." Tyler's voice cracked. "Not everything, not at first. But I knew what she did to Sarah. I knew she was pushing Clara into my life. I knew, and I did nothing." "Why?" The word felt like glass in my throat. "Because it was easier. Because she always fixed everything, made everything perfect. Because you're exactly like her." Margaret stood in the doorway, looking immaculate despite her supposed breakdown. "You understand the importance of family, of legacy. Mother, don't— No, Tyler, it's time for truth, isn't it?" She moved into the room like a queen entering court. "You want confession? Here's mine. I did everything they accused me of, and more. Because this family needed it, needed me." "We have evidence," Ben warned. "Real evidence." "Of course you do." Margaret smiled. "I made sure of it." The realization hit like ice water. "You wanted to be exposed. Clever girl." Margaret sat down, perfectly poised. "Do you know what happens to powerful families in scandal? They become legends, dynasties. The river's name will be immortal now." "You're insane," Clara whispered. "I'm practical. Heaven's book will be a bestseller. Tyler's redemption arc will captivate society. Even you, Clara, will profit from your role as the repentant other woman." She turned to Sarah. "And you, my dear, will finally have your vindication. At what cost?" Tyler stood, shaking. "Our lives? Our choices?" "Choices?" Margaret laughed. "You never made choices, Tyler. You followed my script, just like your father, just like everyone." "Not anymore." I closed my laptop. "Your story ends here." "Does it?" She raised an eyebrow. "Look around, Heaven. Everyone in this room is exactly where I planned, playing their parts perfectly." "No." Sarah stepped forward. "We're not characters in your story anymore. We're witnesses." "To what?" "To this." I pulled out my phone, showing her the live stream. Thousands watching as she confessed, as she revealed her true self. Margaret's composure cracked, just for a moment. "You didn't follow your script?" Clara moved to stand beside me. "That's the thing about manipulation, Margaret. Eventually, people learn to write their own stories." "Tyler," Margaret turned to her son, "handle this." but Tyler was already walking away. "Goodbye, Mother. You'll regret this," she called after him. "All of you." "No," I said quietly. "We won't, because your story isn't ours anymore. It never was." Margaret stood, straightening her jacket. "Well played, Heaven. But remember, every story needs a villain, and I'm very good at that role." She walked out, head high, leaving us in silence. "Now what?" Clara asked. I opened my laptop again, starting a new chapter. Now we tell our own stories, all of them. No scripts, no manipulation, just truth. The cursor blinked, waiting. Behind me, Sarah and Clara exchanged looks. Ben started making calls. And somewhere in the city, Margaret was already planning her next move. But this time, we were ready. This time, we were writing our own endings. The book launch party buzzed with energy, my story displayed in every bookstore window across the city. The Margaret Chronicles had become more than an exposé. It was a movement, inspiring others to break free from their own manipulated lives. I signed another copy, meeting the reader's eyes. "To Sarah," she whispered. "Not the Sarah from your book, but someone who needed this story." Behind her, Clara chatted with journalists, her own tell-all memoir already generating buzz. She caught my eye and nodded. No more scripts, no more perfect roles to play. "Quite a turnout." Ben appeared at my elbow, champagne in hand. "Margaret would be proud." "Is that supposed to be funny?" "Actually, it's supposed to be ironic." He handed me an envelope. "This came to the office today. Thought you should see it." Inside was a letter. Margaret's elegant handwriting unchanged despite everything. "Dear Heaven, you were right. Every story needs a villain. But the best villains, like the best writers, understand their power. You've made me immortal, darling, and for that, I almost forgive you. Margaret. She never changes, does she?" I crumpled the letter. "Maybe that's not the point," a new voice said. I turned to find Lucas standing there, his daughter Emma clutching his hand. "Maybe the point is that you did." I met his eyes, remembering our first meeting at a writing workshop months ago, before the story broke, before he showed me that family could be simple, honest, real. "Emma has something for you," he said softly. The little girl held out a drawing, stick figures holding hands, a sun shining above them. "It's us," she explained, "for your new story." "My new story?" "The happy one," she said, as if it were obvious. "After the sad one ends." I took the drawing, feeling its weight in my hands. Through the window, I could see Tyler across the street, staring at the bookstore display. Our eyes met briefly before he turned away, disappearing into the crowd. "Heaven!" Sarah approached, her therapy practice now flourishing with women escaping their own Margarets. "They're ready for the reading." I moved toward the podium, Lucas and Emma finding seats in the front row. The audience settled, waiting for more revelations, more drama, more pain. Instead, I opened to the epilogue. This isn't a story about revenge. It's not even a story about justice. It's a story about the words we use to write our own lives, and the courage it takes to start a new page. Clara squeezed my hand as she passed. Ben raised his glass. Sarah smiled, finally free of old ghosts. A movement at the back caught my eye. Margaret, elegant as ever, slipping into the shadows. She'd come to witness her own immortality, just as she'd planned. But this wasn't her story anymore. It never really was. I looked down at Emma's drawing, then back at my audience. All these people writing their own stories, breaking their own chains. "Once upon a time," I began, "there was a woman who thought love meant control, and a family who forgot how to speak their own truth." The words flowed, not with anger or revenge, but with understanding. Because in the end, Margaret had given me something precious, the power to tell my own story, to choose my own family, to write my own ending. Emma beamed up at me, Lucas's hand resting protectively on her shoulder. This was my new story, messy, imperfect, real. No scripts, no manipulation, no perfect facades. Just truth, in all its complicated beauty. And somewhere in the shadows, Margaret watched her legacy transform into something she never intended, a testament not to control, but to freedom, not to perfection, but to growth, not to her story, but to ours. I turned the page, ready to begin again.
It's amazing how quickly your life can implode over a single phone call. One moment you're adjusting your veil, and the next, everything you've planned for months comes crashing down around you. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking as I reread the message from our wedding planner. 3 hours before my wedding, and she'd canceled. Just like that. No explanation, no apology, just a brief text saying she couldn't make it. This can't be happening, I whispered, my voice barely audible in the bridal suite. The champagne glasses clinked mockingly behind me as my sister Kelly rushed around, trying to coordinate with the venue staff. "Samantha, breathe," Kelly said, gripping my shoulders. "We can figure this out. David's family has connections." "No," I cut her off sharply. "I don't want to involve them, especially not Maggie." The mention of my soon-to-be mother-in-law made my stomach turn. Something about this felt wrong. The timing was too perfect, too calculated. My phone buzzed again. This time it was David. "Mom's offering to help. She knows someone who can step in." Of course she did. I'd seen enough of Maggie's helpful interventions over the past year to recognize her handiwork. The caterer who suddenly doubled their prices, the florist who mysteriously lost our order, the venue that almost canceled due to a scheduling conflict. Each time, Maggie swooped in with her own preferred vendor, her own vision of what our wedding should be. "Tell your mother thanks, but we've got it handled," I typed back, even though we definitely didn't. The door burst open, and Sophia, our mutual friend, rushed in. I just ran into Maggie in the hallway. She's already calling someone named Patricia to take over the planning. My fingers curled into fists, crushing the delicate lace of my dress. Did she seem surprised about our planner canceling? Sophia hesitated, and that pause told me everything I needed to know. "She was smiling, wasn't she?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Like she'd just won something," Sophia admitted quietly. Kelly swore under her breath. "That manipulative—" "Ladies!" A smooth voice interrupted from the doorway. Maggie stood there, perfect in her designer suit, not a hair out of place. "I've taken care of everything. Patricia will be here in 20 minutes. She's much more suitable for a Mitchell family wedding." The way she emphasized suitable made my skin crawl. I caught her subtle glance at my dress, the one I'd chosen instead of her recommended designer. "How fortunate that Patricia was available on such short notice," I said, meeting her gaze, almost like she was waiting for the call. Something flickered in Maggie's eyes. Satisfaction, maybe, or challenge. "Providence smiles on those who plan ahead, dear. Or those who orchestrate disasters," I muttered after she left. Kelly grabbed my arm. "Sam, you don't think she actually convinced our wedding planner to bail last minute? Created chaos so she could swoop in and take control?" I laughed bitterly. It's exactly what she'd do. I walked to the window, watching guests arrive in their expensive cars. Below, I could see David greeting people, handsome in his tuxedo, completely unaware of his mother's machinations. "What are you going to do?" Sophia asked. I touched the window, leaving a small smudge on the perfect glass. "For now, I'm going to marry David, but after that," I turned to face them, something hard and cold settling in my chest. "I'm going to make sure Maggie regrets every single game she's played with my life." "Sam," Kelly's voice held a warning. "No," I said firmly. "I'm done being the bigger person. She wants to play games? Fine. But she's about to learn that this veterinarian from the wrong side of town knows exactly how to deal with snakes." The mirror reflected my image: white dress, perfect makeup, and eyes that had lost their last trace of innocence. In 3 hours, I'd be a Mitchell. and then the real game would begin. Patricia's heels clicked against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to disaster. The reception hall buzzed with whispered conversations and judgmental glances. My wedding had become exactly what I'd fought against. A Mitchell Society spectacle. The ice sculpture should be centered, Maggie commanded, waving her hand dismissively at the staff. And those flowers are completely wrong. Patricia, didn't we discuss burgundy roses? The bride specifically requested wildflowers, Patricia replied, her voice wavering. I stood in the doorway, still in my wedding dress, watching my carefully planned celebration transform into Maggie's vision. David appeared beside me, his hand finding mine. It looks different, he said carefully. It looks like your mother's annual charity gala, I replied, keeping my voice low, complete with her usual crowd of social climbers. As if on cue, I spotted several unfamiliar faces among our guests, Maggie's friends who definitely hadn't been on our invitation list. I'll talk to her, David promised, but I grabbed his arm. Don't. It's what she wants, to create drama between us on our wedding day. A commotion near the cake table drew our attention. Kelly was arguing with Patricia, her hands gesturing at the elaborate 5-tier monstrosity that had replaced our original choice. That's not the cake they ordered, Kelly insisted. Show me the contract. Patricia's eyes darted to Maggie, who swooped in like a perfectly coiffed vulture. There was a tragic mishap with the original baker. Fortunately, I know the most extraordinary pâtissier. Tragic mishap? I interrupted, stepping forward. What exactly happened to our cake, Maggie? The room grew quieter, guests pretending not to eavesdrop while hanging on every word. Oh, darling. Maggie's smile was razor sharp. You really should be mingling with your guests instead of worrying about such details. Although, her gaze swept over the crowd, I noticed several of your invited guests couldn't make it. How unfortunate. My stomach clenched. I'd noticed the same thing. Several of my friends and colleagues had canceled last minute, citing various emergencies. Samantha, a gravelly voice cut through the tension. Evelyn Mitchell stood nearby, elegant in her vintage Chanel, watching the scene with shrewd eyes. Come sit with me for a moment. I followed David's grandmother to a quiet corner, aware of Maggie's gaze burning into my back. Your mother-in-law, Evelyn said, adjusting her pearl necklace, has always believed control equals love. She planned David's entire life before he could walk, when he defied her by choosing you. She paused, studying my face. Well, let's just say she's not used to losing. I'm not something to win or lose, I said through gritted teeth. No, you're not. Evelyn's eyes glittered. You're something far more dangerous. You're change, and Maggie fears change more than anything. Before I could respond, Tham appeared, his face tight with concern. Sam, got a minute? There's something you need to see. He led me to a service corridor, pulling out his phone. I overheard Patricia on the phone earlier. Look at these texts. The messages showed a conversation between Patricia and Maggie from weeks ago, planning today's takeover in detail. Every emergency had been orchestrated, every replacement vendor prearranged. She's been planning this for months, Tham said quietly. I handed the phone back, my hands steady despite the rage building inside me. Thank you, Tham. This is helpful. Sam? He hesitated. What are you going to do? I watched David across the room, laughing with his father, blissfully unaware of his mother's machinations. Right now, I'm going to smile, dance with my husband, and play the grateful daughter-in-law. And later, I said, smoothing my dress, I'm going to learn everything there is to know about Maggie Mitchell. Every secret, every weakness, every skeleton in her designer closet. Because this isn't just about my wedding anymore. It's about making sure she never tries to control anyone's life again. Tom's expression shifted from concern to determination. Whatever you need, I'm in. I returned to the reception, accepting congratulations and pretending not to notice how Maggie had rearranged the seating to separate me from my family. But with each fake smile and polite nod, I was taking mental notes, gathering ammunition. The game had changed. Maggie thought she was teaching me a lesson about power and control. Instead, she was teaching me exactly how to destroy her. The email arrived during surgery. I was elbow deep in a German shepherd's abdomen when my phone buzzed repeatedly on the counter. Only after I'd closed up and sent the dog to recovery did I check the messages. Did you see what she posted? Kelly's text read, followed by several screenshots. There it was, on Maggie's social media. A carefully crafted post about her concerns for David's well-being, subtly highlighting my working-class background and suggesting I was taking advantage of the Mitchell family's generosity. She'd even dredged up an old photo of me from college, looking decidedly unglamorous at a protest rally. "Your wife seems to have quite the colorful past," read one comment from her society friends. "Money can't buy class," wrote another. Tom appeared in my office doorway as I scrolled through the comments. "Those society vultures are having a field day with this. She's trying to paint me as a gold digger," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. But that's not even the worst part. I showed him the email that had triggered Kelly's warning. It was from the veterinary board announcing a surprise audit of my practice. The sender's address belonged to one of Maggie's closest friends. "She's going after my career now." The words tasted bitter. This isn't just about social standing anymore. "Sam," Tom hesitated, "there's something else you should know. I overheard David on the phone earlier. Maggie's been pressuring him about the prenup, suggesting he add new conditions." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "We already signed the prenup. She can't." "She's claiming new evidence of financial misconduct on your part." A knock interrupted us. David stood in the doorway, his expression troubled. "Can we talk?" Tom squeezed my shoulder as he left, closing the door behind him. "Your mother's busy today," I said before David could speak. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I usually found endearing. "Sam, she's just worried about..." "About what? That I'll steal the family silver? Or maybe she's worried I'll expose how she's been manipulating everyone around her for years? It's not that simple." He pulled out his phone, showing me another post, this one from an anonymous account, detailing past Mitchell family scandals. "Someone's been digging into our family history. Mom thinks it's you." I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Of course she does, because heaven forbid anyone else have dirt on the mighty Mitchell family." "Is it you?" The question hung between us like a blade. "No," I said quietly, "but I'm starting to wish it was." Before he could respond, Evelyn appeared in the doorway, elegant as always but with an urgency in her movements. "David, your father needs you at the office, immediately." Her tone left no room for argument. After he left, Evelyn closed the door and turned to me. "Maggie's playing a dangerous game, but she's not as clever as she thinks. Did you know she tried this same routine with Richard's first fiancé?" I hadn't known Richard had been engaged before Maggie. "What happened?" "The girl left. Couldn't handle the pressure." Evelyn's eyes glittered. "But you're made of stronger stuff, aren't you?" She pulled an envelope from her purse. "These are copies of some interesting documents about Maggie's past, including how she really joined the Mitchell family." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The contents made my eyes widen. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because," Evelyn said, her voice steel wrapped in silk, "sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to prove you can hit harder. The question is, are you willing to throw the punch?" I stared at the documents, thinking of the audit, the social media attacks, the The prenup manipulation, each move designed to isolate and discredit me. Yes, I said finally. I am. Evelyn smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Good, because Maggie's not going to stop until someone makes her. Just remember, in this family, nothing is ever quite what it seems. She left me alone with the documents, their revelations burning in my hands like hot coals. I had what I needed to destroy Maggie's carefully constructed image, but as I read deeper, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played by forces I didn't fully understand. The question was, whose game was I really playing? The Mitchell family's annual charity gala loomed ahead, all gleaming marble and crystal chandeliers. I adjusted my borrowed designer dress, feeling like an imposter despite the perfect fit. The documents Evelyn had given me burned in my clutch, waiting for the right moment. Ready? David squeezed my hand as we approached the entrance. I nodded, noticing how he unconsciously straightened his tie. Another nervous tell. He knew something was wrong, but couldn't quite piece it together. Inside, Maggie held court near the champagne fountain, her laugh carrying across the room with practiced precision. Her eyes found mine, and her smile sharpened. "Darling," she called out, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I was just telling everyone about your wonderful work with animals. So, noble." The way she said noble made it sound like a character flaw. "Speaking of noble causes," I replied, matching her volume, "I heard the most fascinating story about your early days with the Mitchell Family Foundation." Her champagne glass paused halfway to her lips. Tom appeared at my elbow right on cue. "Samantha, could I borrow you for a moment? There's someone you should meet." He led me to a corner where Kelly waited with an elderly man I didn't recognize. His face was familiar somehow, but I couldn't place it. "This is Harold Bennett," Kelly said quietly. "He used to work for the Mitchell Foundation." The old man's eyes were sharp despite his frail appearance. "You're the one asking questions about Margaret Mitchell." "I'm interested in the truth," I said carefully. "Truth?" He gave a bitter laugh. "That woman wouldn't know truth if it bit her. I was there when she orchestrated the takeover of the foundation from Richard's first wife, destroyed that poor woman's reputation completely." My hand tightened on my clutch. "What exactly did she do?" Before he could answer, Evelyn appeared looking alarmed. "Samantha, dear, we need to talk. Now." She practically dragged me into an empty study, closing the door firmly. "You need to be very careful about what you do next." "Why? Because I'm getting too close to the truth about Maggie? Because you're not seeing the whole picture." Evelyn's usual poise cracked slightly. "Those documents I gave you, they're not just about Maggie. They could destroy this entire family." A knock interrupted us. David entered, his face uncharacteristically stern. "I just got an interesting call from the bank. Someone's been accessing old foundation records using my credentials." My stomach dropped. I hadn't been careful enough covering my tracks. "That would be me," Evelyn said smoothly. "I asked Samantha to help me investigate some discrepancies." David's expression darkened. "Does this have anything to do with the anonymous posts about our family?" "What posts?" I asked, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. He pulled out his phone, showing us a fresh social media post, one I hadn't seen before. It detailed exactly how Maggie had manipulated her way into the Mitchell family, including documents I recognized from my own research, but I hadn't posted them. "This isn't me," I said, looking at Evelyn. Her face gave nothing away. The door opened again. Maggie stood there, Richard beside her looking grave. "No," she said. "It wasn't you. It was me." The room went silent. "I've been posting my own secrets," Maggie continued, "because someone's been threatening to expose much worse ones. And now I know who." Her gaze fixed on Evelyn, who merely smiled. "You always were clever, Margaret," Evelyn said, "but not quite clever enough. I looked between them, suddenly feeling like a pawn in a much larger game. The documents in my clutch weren't ammunition, they were bait, and I'd taken it completely. "What's really going on here?" David demanded. "Ask your grandmother," Maggie said bitterly. "Ask her about the real reason she brought Samantha into this fight." Evelyn's smile never wavered, but her eyes were cold. "Sometimes, dear, the best way to destroy an enemy is to give them exactly what they want." I felt David tense beside me as the truth began to dawn. I wasn't fighting Maggie's manipulation. I was caught in the crossfire of a decades-old war between two masters of deception, and I had no idea whose side I should be on. The Mitchell Foundation's quarterly board meeting wasn't meant to be a battlefield, but I could taste the tension in the air as I took my seat beside David. Maggie sat across from us, perfectly composed despite the whispers circulating about her latest social media scandal. Evelyn presided at the head of the table, her presence somehow both reassuring and threatening. "Before we begin," Richard said, shuffling through papers, "there's the matter of unauthorized access to Foundation records." My fingers tightened around my pen. Beside me, David's breathing changed slightly. "Fascinating timing," Maggie said, her voice silk over steel, "especially given the recent articles about our family's history." "Perhaps we should discuss the Foundation's original mission," Evelyn interrupted smoothly. "Back when Catherine Mitchell was chair." The room went still. Catherine, Richard's first wife, the woman Maggie had replaced. I watched Maggie's face, catching the slight twitch in her jaw. "Ancient history," Maggie dismissed, but her knuckles were white around her water glass. "Not entirely." I pulled out my tablet, heart pounding. "I've been reviewing the original charter. There are some interesting discrepancies between then and now." "Samantha," David warned quietly, but I continued. "For instance, the educational outreach program Catherine started. It was quite successful until it was suddenly discontinued in 1992. I met Maggie's eyes. "The same year you joined the board. Those programs were inefficient," Maggie snapped. "They were helping working-class students attend college," I countered. "Students like me." Evelyn's smile grew sharper. "Perhaps we should put it to a vote, reinstating some of Catherine's original initiatives." "Absolutely not." Maggie stood, her chair scraping back. "This is ridiculous. We all know what's happening here. Your new daughter-in-law is trying to—" "To what?" I interrupted, standing as well. "Expose how you've twisted this foundation to serve your social climbing, or how you used it to destroy Catherine's reputation when she started asking questions about missing funds." The words hung in the air like smoke. I hadn't meant to reveal that piece yet, but Maggie's face told me I'd hit home. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she hissed. "Show them the documents, Samantha," Evelyn commanded softly. My tablet shook slightly as I pulled up the files. Financial records from 1992, specifically transfers to offshore accounts under the name M. Reynolds. Your maiden name, Maggie. Richard's face had gone pale. "Margaret? It's not what you think," Maggie said quickly. "I was protecting us. Catherine was going to expose—" "That you were embezzling," I suggested. "That the entire Mitchell fortune was built on fraud," Maggie shouted. The silence that followed was deafening. "Well," Evelyn said into the quiet, "that's not quite how I planned this revelation." David stood slowly. "Grandmother, what exactly is going on?" "Ask your father," she replied. "He's known all along, haven't you, Richard?" I looked between them all, Maggie's desperate face, Richard's guilt, Evelyn's calculated calm, and David's growing horror. This wasn't just about Maggie anymore. The entire foundation, the Mitchell legacy, was built on lies. "The vote stands," Evelyn declared. We'll decide today whether to reinstate Catherine's programs and review all financial decisions made since 1992. You can't, Maggie whispered. Actually, with Samantha's proxy vote from the shares David gave her as a wedding gift, we can. I felt David stiffen beside me. We both knew he hadn't given me any shares. I never, he began. Check your papers, dear. Evelyn smiled. You'd be surprised what you've signed recently. The realization hit me like ice water. I wasn't just a pawn in their game. I was the weapon they'd both been waiting to use. Maggie had tried to destroy me to protect her secrets, while Evelyn had cultivated me to expose them. And now I had to choose, follow through with the vote and potentially destroy the family I'd married into, or back down and let decades of corruption continue. David's hand found mine under the table, squeezing once, but I couldn't tell if it was in support or warning. The board members waited, pens poised over their voting cards, while I stood at the crossroads between justice and destruction. The vote, Evelyn prompted, begins now. The Mitchell Summer Gala sparkled with false perfection, like a diamond made of glass. I watched from the terrace as David paced near the fountain, phone pressed to his ear, his gestures growing more agitated with each passing moment. The press is already here, Kelly whispered, appearing at my elbow. Maggie's people are trying to control the narrative, but the truth has a way of slipping through. Evelyn finished, joining us with 2 champagne flutes. She offered me one with a knowing smile. Especially when it's carefully guided. The documents I'd planned to reveal tonight felt heavy in my clutch, but something about Evelyn's confidence made me uneasy. You never told me how you got these records, I said carefully. Didn't I? Her eyes glittered. Perhaps you should ask Catherine. My glass nearly slipped from my fingers. Catherine is dead. Is she? Evelyn's smile widened as she gestured toward the arriving guests. A woman in her 60s stepped out of a black car, her presence causing an immediate stir. Maggie across the garden went absolutely still. You planned this, I realized, watching the color drain from Maggie's face. All of it. Of course I did. Evelyn sipped her champagne, and you played your part beautifully. David was walking toward us now, his expression dark. The board members are all here, and they've seen the news. What news? I pulled out my phone, finding dozens of missed notifications. The headlines hit like physical blows. Mitchell Foundation fraud exposed. Decades of financial misconduct. Whistleblower reveals family corruption. But I hadn't leaked anything yet. You didn't really think I'd leave this to chance, did you? Evelyn asked softly. The documents I gave you were copies. The originals went to the press an hour ago. The garden spun slightly. You used me. We all used each other, Catherine said, joining our group. Her voice was stronger than I'd expected. Maggie used you to protect her position. Evelyn used you to destroy it. And you? She smiled sadly. You used them both for revenge. Sam. David's voice cracked slightly. Did you know about this? Before I could answer, Maggie stormed over, her perfect composure finally shattered. You vindictive little... Careful, Margaret, Evelyn cut in. The press is watching. The press? Maggie laughed, the sound brittle. You've destroyed everything. The foundation, the family name. You did that, I snapped, when you stole it from Catherine. I protected this family. Maggie's voice rose. Everything I did was to preserve what we built. What you stole, Catherine corrected quietly. And now, Evelyn added, what you've lost. Cameras flashed as reporters approached. David stepped away from me, his expression unreadable. In that moment, I realized I'd lost him too. David, I reached for him, but he pulled back. Was any of it real? He asked. Us? Or was I just part of your revenge? I loved you, I whispered. I still do. But you loved revenge more. He walked away as the reporters swarmed, their questions becoming a deafening roar. Maggie was being led inside by Richard, both their faces ashen. Catherine stood watching them, victory and sadness warring in her expression. And Evelyn? She simply smiled, raising her glass in a mock toast. "Congratulations, dear," she said. "You've won." But as I stood there, watching my marriage crumble and the Mitchell family implode, victory felt like ashes in my mouth. I'd wanted justice, but this felt like destruction. I'd wanted to expose the truth, but I'd become part of the lie. Kelly appeared beside me, gripping my arm. "We need to go, now." As she led me through the chaos, I caught a final glimpse of David. He stood between his parents, his back straight, his shoulders bearing the weight of his family's disgrace. He didn't look back. The night air hit my face as we reached Kelly's car, and only then did I realize I was crying. "What have I done?" I whispered. But the only answer was the sound of camera shutters and the distant murmur of a family falling apart. A destruction I'd helped orchestrate, even if I hadn't pulled the final trigger. I'd become exactly what I'd hated: a manipulator, a destroyer, a Mitchell in all but name. And now I had nothing left to show for it but the bitter taste of a victory that felt more like defeat. 3 days after the gala, I found Maggie sitting alone in her garden, methodically cutting roses from their stems. The morning papers lay scattered around her feet, their headlines screaming about the Mitchell family's disgrace. "Have you come to gloat?" She didn't look up from her pruning. "I came to understand." I remained standing, watching her hands shake slightly as she cut another rose. "Why did you do it? All of it? You think you've won something, don't you?" She finally met my eyes. "Destroyed the big bad Mitchell matriarch, exposed all our dirty secrets, but you have no idea what you've really done." "Then tell me." She laughed, the sound brittle as frozen grass. "Did Catherine tell you why she really left? Not the sanitized version Evelyn fed you, but the truth?" Before I could answer, David appeared at the garden entrance. He looked exhausted, his usual polish replaced by shadows under his eyes. "The FBI is here," he said quietly. Maggie's scissors dropped to the ground. "Already?" "They're not here for you." David's voice cracked slightly. "They're here for grandmother." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "What?" "Oh, you clever fool," Maggie whispered. "You never wondered why Evelyn was so eager to help you? Why she had all those convenient documents ready? The Foundation's corruption was a cover?" David stepped closer, his face hard. "For something much worse, the missing money, the offshore accounts. They weren't Mom's, they were Evelyn's." "But Catherine?" "Found out," Maggie finished, "and Evelyn made sure she disappeared. I didn't drive Catherine away, Samantha. I helped her escape. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. I sank onto a stone bench, the morning sun suddenly too bright. All these years," Maggie continued, "I played the villain, let everyone think I was the controlling monster, because as long as they were watching me, they weren't watching Evelyn," I finished, bile rising in my throat. "And now, thanks to your crusade for justice, the one person who could keep her in check is ruined." Maggie's smile was razor sharp. "While Evelyn walks away with everything." "She's already gone, isn't she?" I asked David. He nodded. "Left last night. The Foundation's accounts are empty." "You were so focused on revenge," Maggie said softly. "You never saw you were just another piece on her board. Just like I was, just like Catherine. Where is Catherine now?" "Safe, hidden, which is more than I can say for any of us anymore." Footsteps on gravel announced the FBI agent's approach. David moved to stand between them and his mother, but Maggie waved him away. "Don't," she said. "Some fights you can't win. As the agents led Maggie away for questioning, I caught her final whisper, "I hope your revenge was worth it." David and I stood in the ruined garden, surrounded by half-cut roses and scattered newspapers. The distance between us felt infinite. "I never wanted this," I said. "Didn't you?" His voice was tired. "You wanted to destroy my family. Congratulations, mission accomplished." "David." "The funny thing is," he continued, "Mom was trying to protect me. From Evelyn, from the truth, from all of it. And I let you tear her down because I thought I was choosing love over loyalty." He turned to leave, then paused. "But maybe they're the same thing. And maybe we both forgot that somewhere along the way." I watched him walk away, understanding finally hitting me like a physical blow. In my quest for justice, I'd become the weapon Evelyn needed. In trying to expose one manipulator, I'd played right into the hands of a worse one. The roses Maggie had been cutting lay scattered across the ground, their thorns still sharp, their petals already beginning to wilt. Like revenge, I realized, beautiful from a distance, but deadly up close, and ultimately destined to decay. I pulled out my phone and dialed Kelly's number. "I need your help," I said when she answered. "We need to find Catherine. She's the only one who knows the whole truth." And then what? I looked at the abandoned garden, at the chaos I'd helped create. Then we fix what I broke, all of it. But as police cars pulled up to the Mitchell estate, their lights painting the roses in flashes of red and blue, I wondered if anything could ever be truly fixed once it had been so thoroughly shattered. The small cafe on the outskirts of Seattle smelled like rain and coffee. Catherine sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug, looking nothing like the polished society woman from the gala. Here, she seemed more real, more human. "Evelyn's in Singapore," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. "These are the account numbers Kelly traced." Catherine nodded, unsurprised. She always had exit strategies. The question is, what are you going to do with this information? Before I could answer, the cafe door chimed. David walked in, followed by Maggie. The sight of them together made my chest ache. They joined us silently, David's hand brushing mine as he sat down. The touch felt like forgiveness and accusation all at once. "The FBI cleared me," Maggie said quietly, "but the foundation is finished." "Good." Catherine's voice was steel. "It needs to be rebuilt from the ground up, properly this time." "With whose money?" David asked. "Mine." I pulled out another envelope. "I'm selling my clinic." The silence that followed felt heavy with possibility and pain. "Sam, no," David started, but I cut him off. "I broke this. I need to fix it." I met Maggie's eyes, not for revenge or justice, but because it's right. "And what do you want in return?" Maggie's question carried years of distrust. "Nothing." I smiled slightly. "That's the point." Catherine reached into her bag, producing a worn leather journal. "These are the original foundation documents, the real ones, not Evelyn's versions. They outline a different kind of legacy, one about helping people, not controlling them." "Like the educational programs," I said. "Yes." Catherine opened the journal. "Programs that could help students like you, Samantha, not because they're worthy of Mitchell charity, but because everyone deserves a chance to build their own legacy." David's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. "It won't be easy," Maggie warned. "The Mitchell name is toxic now." "Then we'll use a different name," I suggested. "The Catherine Turner Foundation." Both Catherine and Maggie looked startled. "Why Turner?" Catherine asked. "Because names have power," I said, "and it's time to build something new instead of fighting over something old." David's thumb traced circles on my palm as Maggie and Catherine exchanged long looks across the table. "I'll help," Maggie said finally, "but not as a director, as an advisor only." "Agreed," Catherine nodded. And you, David? I go where my wife goes. His voice was quiet but certain. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the windows like applause or perhaps warning. We sat there, 5 people who had hurt each other in countless ways, trying to build something from the wreckage of revenge. There's one condition, I said, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Complete transparency. No more secrets, no more manipulation. We do this in the open or not at all. Even if it means facing uncomfortable truths? Maggie asked. Especially then. Catherine closed her journal with a soft thud. Then let's begin. As we left the cafe, David pulled me aside while Maggie and Catherine walked ahead, already deep in discussion about restructuring plans. You're really selling your clinic? He asked. Already sold. I watched his face carefully. Unless you think I'm making another mistake. No. He touched my cheek gently. I think you're finally making things right. We all are. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and sharp. Ahead of us, Maggie and Catherine paused, waiting. Behind us lay the ruins of what revenge had wrought. Before us stretched the harder path of reconstruction. I took David's hand and stepped forward, understanding finally that true justice isn't about destroying what's broken. It's about building something better from the pieces. But as we walked toward our waiting family, I felt the weight of Evelyn's account numbers in my pocket. Some choices, I realized, would have to wait for another day. Some forms of justice require patience rather than revenge. For now, though, we had work to do. And maybe that was enough.
The scent of lavender and pine sol always meant trouble. Mother Dearest was stress cleaning again, probably reorganizing my cabinets or rearranging Emma's toys for the 100th time. I should have known something was wrong when I pulled into the driveway and caught that familiar chemical smell wafting through the open windows. I'm Julia, and until today, I thought I had mastered the art of living with my mother-in-law, Martha. 6 months of practiced smiles, carefully chosen words, and strategic retreats to maintain peace in my own home. But sometimes peace comes at too high a price. "Mommy!" Emma crashed into my legs the moment I stepped through the door, her dark curls wild and untamed. "Grandma Martha says we're having pizza for dinner." Does she now? I kept my voice light, though my stomach clenched. Another dinner decision made without my input. Another small rebellion against my authority in my own home. The house was spotless. Too spotless. Martha's cleaning frenzies usually meant she was building up to something. I found her in the living room, perched on the edge of the sofa like a bird of prey, hands folded primly in her lap. "Julia, dear, how was your outing?" The pause before outing carried enough judgment to fill a courtroom. "The charity lunch was lovely, Martha. Thank you for watching Emma." I moved toward the bookshelf where I kept our family photo album, needing to add some pictures from today's event. The empty space where it should have been made, my heart skip. "Looking for something?" Martha's voice carried that sickly sweet tone she reserved for her special moments of triumph. "The photo album." "Oh, that old thing?" She waved dismissively. "I took the liberty of reorganizing your photographs. They were in such disarray. But while I was at it, I couldn't help but notice how few recent pictures you have of Emma. A mother should document every precious moment, don't you think?" My fingers curled into fists. "Where is it, Martha?" She reached beside the sofa and produced a crisp white envelope. "I've written down some thoughts about proper maternal documentation, and perhaps some other areas where a bit more attention might be beneficial." I snatched the envelope, my hands trembling as I pulled out the letter. Each perfectly penned word was a dagger. "Dear Julia, as a mother myself, I feel compelled to address certain concerns regarding Emma's upbringing. Your frequent absences, 3 charity events this month alone, and lack of proper documentation of Emma's childhood moments suggest a troubling pattern of neglect." The letter went on, 2 pages of carefully crafted criticism disguised as concern. My photo album, the one containing every precious memory since Emma's birth, was being held hostage until I demonstrated more maternal responsibility. "Where is my album?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Somewhere safe, Martha smiled, until you've had time to reflect on my suggestions. Emma tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, can we look at the pictures of my birthday? I crouched down to her level, forcing a smile. Not right now, sweetheart. Why don't you go play in your room while I talk to Grandma Martha? After Emma disappeared upstairs, I turned to face my mother-in-law. This ends now. I'm only thinking of Emma's best interests, Martha said, rising from the sofa. Someone has to. The front door opened and Ryan's voice called out, I'm home early. Something smells amazing. Martha's face transformed instantly into a mask of maternal concern. In here, darling. I was just having a heart-to-heart with Julia about some family matters. I watched her glide toward my husband, the letter crumpling in my grip. 6 months of subtle undermining, of questioning my every decision, of trying to drive a wedge between me and my daughter. But stealing my memories? That was her first real mistake, and I was done playing defense. Ryan's fork scraped against his plate, the sound grating against my nerves like fingernails on a chalkboard. He hadn't looked up once during Martha's theatrical recounting of her day with Emma. And then, Martha continued, dabbing her lips with a napkin, I showed Emma those lovely ballet videos from when you were young, Ryan. She was absolutely transfixed. That's nice, Mom. Ryan's attention remained fixed on his phone, probably checking work emails again. I pushed my untouched pizza around the plate, the stolen photo album weighing heavy on my mind. Emma, sweetie, how about we read that new library book before bed? Oh, Martha interjected. I've already promised to read her the special book I bought today. It's about a little girl who lives with her grandmother. Isn't that right, precious? Emma nodded, her eyes darting between Martha and me. The hesitation in her expression made my chest tighten. Actually, I said, measuring each word, I'd like to spend some time with my daughter before bed. Martha's smile didn't waver, but her knuckles whitened around her wine glass. Julia, dear, you've had your outing today. Surely you can spare Emma for one bedtime story with her grandmother. Ryan? I turned to my husband, silently pleading for support. He finally looked up, confusion crossing his features. What's the problem? Mom's just trying to help, Jules. You know how busy you've been lately with all these charity events. The betrayal stung worse than I expected. I've attended exactly 3 events in 6 months, Ryan. 3. Now, Julia, Martha's voice dripped with false concern. There's no need to get defensive. We're all family here. Speaking of which, Ryan, did you know Julia missed Emma's dance class last week? I didn't miss, I started, but Martha steamrolled over my protest. Emma was so disappointed when all the other mothers were there for the parent observation day. Ryan frowned. Jules, you didn't mention that. Because it wasn't parent observation day, I snapped. That's next week. I have it marked on the calendar in the kitchen. Martha's eyes widened in practiced innocence. Oh dear, did I get the dates mixed up? I could have sworn... Well, no matter. I was happy to step in regardless. Emma's small voice cut through the tension. Mommy, my tummy hurts. I pushed back from the table, grateful for the excuse to escape. Come on, sweetheart, let's get you upstairs. In Emma's bathroom, I held her hair back as she threw up the pizza. Martha appeared in the doorway, hovering like a concerned vulture. Poor dear, she cooed. I knew that second slice was too much. Julia, you really should monitor her portions more carefully. I bit back a retort, focusing instead on comforting Emma. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. Perhaps, Martha suggested, Emma should sleep in my room tonight. I have more experience with sick children, after all. Absolutely not. The words came out sharper than I intended. Julia! Ryan's voice carried from the hallway. Mom's just trying to help. I helped Emma rinse her mouth, my mind racing. This was Martha's game, death by 1,000 cuts, each small criticism and intervention designed to paint me as an incompetent mother. Later, after Emma had finally fallen asleep in her own bed, I found Ryan in his home office. We need to talk about your mother. He sighed without looking up from his laptop. Can we not do this tonight? I have a presentation tomorrow. She took our photo album. What? That got his attention. She's holding it hostage until I prove I'm a better mother. Ryan rubbed his temples. Jules, That doesn't even make sense. Mom wouldn't. Check her room, I challenged. Right now. I'll wait. He stared at me for a long moment before standing. Fine, but when we don't find anything, I want you to drop this attitude toward my mother. I followed him to Martha's door, where we found it locked, a first since she'd moved in. Ryan knocked. Mom? You awake? Just a moment, darling. Martha's voice was followed by suspicious rustling sounds. When she opened the door, her smile was too bright, too rehearsed. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of something familiar being hastily shoved under her pillow, the corner of a blue album cover I would recognize anywhere. Ryan saw it too. His shoulders tensed, but before he could speak, Martha launched into a story about feeling unwell and needing her rest. As we walked away, I watched my husband's face carefully. The crack in his perfect image of his mother was tiny, but it was there, and I intended to make it bigger. The email from Emma's school glowed accusingly on my phone screen. My daughter had been enrolled in 3 new after-school activities: advanced math tutoring, competitive gymnastics, and Chinese lessons. I hadn't signed up for any of them. My brother David set a steaming cup of coffee in front of me. We were hiding out in his restaurant's back office, the only place I could think straight anymore. Show me that email again. I handed him my phone. The enrollment forms were signed last week, while I was at that dentist appointment. Jesus, David muttered, scrolling through the message. Martha's got some nerve, signing Emma up for all this without telling you. She used Ryan's email address. He probably hasn't even noticed the confirmations coming in. I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug, trying to stop them from shaking. You should see Emma, David. She's exhausted, 6 years old and scheduled down to the minute. Have you told Ryan? He's barely home. When he is, Martha's always there, hovering, controlling the narrative. The coffee burned my tongue, but I welcomed the pain. This morning, she told him I forgot to pack Emma's lunch. I didn't forget. She hid the lunch I made and packed her own. A knock at the office door made me jump. One of David's waitresses poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but there's a call for Julia. Says it's about Emma. My heart stopped. I grabbed the phone from David's desk. Hello? Mrs. Harrison? This is Nurse Chen from Riverside Elementary. Emma's feeling unwell. She got dizzy during her lunch break and... Dizzy? Is she okay? She's resting now. Your mother-in-law is already here to pick her up. No! The word exploded from me. Do not release my daughter to anyone but me. I'm on my way. I found them in the nurse's office. Martha perched on the edge of Emma's cot, stroking her hair. My daughter's face was pale, dark circles under her eyes that no 6-year-old should have. Julia, Martha's voice dripped concern. You didn't need to leave your... whatever you were doing. I had everything under control. Emma, baby, how are you feeling? I knelt beside the cot, opposite Martha. Tired, Mommy. My head hurts. Of course she's tired, Martha said. Children need structure, discipline. These new programs will help build her character. Programs you signed her up for without my knowledge or consent. Martha's eyes narrowed. Ryan agreed. Ryan doesn't know, does he? You forged the signatures, used his email, just like you've been going through my phone, deleting messages from the school. I don't know what you're talking about. But her hand tightened on Emma's shoulder, making my daughter wince. Let go of her. Julia, you're being hysterical. This is exactly why I said, let go of my daughter. Nurse Chen appeared in the doorway, sensing the tension. Is everything all right? No, I said, pulling out my phone. It's not. I'm calling my husband. Martha's composure cracked. He's in an important meeting. About his daughter being in the nurse's office? About you forging his signature? Let's see what he thinks is important. I dialed, holding Martha's gaze. 1 ring, 2, 3. Jules, I'm kind of in the middle of something. Emma's in the nurse's office. She collapsed from exhaustion because your mother enrolled her in 3 extra programs without our permission. She forged your signature, Ryan, used your email. Check your deleted folders. You'll find the confirmations she tried to hide. Silence. Then, Mom did what? Martha was already gathering her things, backing toward the door. Ryan, darling, I can explain. But Ryan's voice had changed, hardened. Don't move, Mom. Jules, take Emma home. I'm leaving work now. I lifted Emma into my arms, her small body too light, too fragile. Martha blocked the doorway. This isn't over, she whispered, low enough that only I could hear. You have no idea what you're doing. No, Martha, I replied, feeling Emma's arms tighten around my neck. For the first time, I know exactly what I'm doing. As I carried Emma to the car, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about the photo album anymore. This was war, and Martha had just lost her first major battle, but the look in her eyes told me she wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot. The box appeared on our doorstep 3 days after the school incident. No return address, just Emma's name in Martha's perfect cursive. Inside lay my wedding dress, carefully cut into precise, methodical strips. I stood in the kitchen, holding the mutilated silk, when Ryan came home early. His face darkened at the sight. Mom's gone too far. He ran his fingers through his hair. I'll talk to her. Like you talked to her about the forged signatures? The words came out sharper than intended. She apologized, you accepted, and nothing changed. What do you want me to do, Jules? Throw her out? The front door opened before I could respond. Martha's voice carried from the hallway, accompanied by Emma's excited chatter. And then we can show Daddy your wonderful news. Ryan frowned. What news? Martha swept in, brandishing a piece of paper. Emma's been accepted into St. Catherine's Academy. Isn't it wonderful? My stomach dropped. St. Catherine's was 2 hours away. It's a boarding school, Martha continued, beaming. The same one Ryan attended. I took the liberty of submitting an application months ago, and they've offered her a full scholarship. Ryan took the acceptance letter, his expression unreadable. Mom, we never discussed... Of course, I knew Julia might object, Martha cut in, given her attachment issues. But Emma deserves the best education possible. Don't you agree? Emma tugged at my sleeve. Grandma says they have horses, Mommy. I crouched down to her level, fighting to keep my voice steady. Sweetie, why don't you go upstairs and start your homework? We need to talk about this as adults. Once Emma was gone, I turned to Martha. You had no right. I had every right. Martha's mask slipped, revealing something cold beneath. As a grandmother, as a former educator, as someone who wants more for Emma than this. She gestured dismissively at our home. Ryan, I said quietly, your mother just tried to send our daughter to boarding school without consulting us. Are you going to say anything? He stood there, still holding the acceptance letter, looking lost. It is a good school, Jules. Something inside me shattered. I need some air. I grabbed my keys, the shredded wedding dress still clutched in my other hand. Julia, don't be dramatic, Martha called after me. This is exactly why Emma needs proper guidance. I slammed the door on her words. 20 minutes later, I sat in David's office again, spreading the strips of my wedding dress across his desk. She's trying to take Emma. My voice sounded strange, distant. And Ryan, he's actually considering it. David examined one of the silk strips. This is a threat, Julia. She's showing you what she can do to your marriage, your family. I know. I picked up a piece of the dress, remembering how proud Martha had been at the wedding, all smiles and tears. She's been playing the long game. Every criticism, every helpful suggestion, every time she undermined my decisions, it was all leading to this. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. Come home, please, we need to talk. Another buzz, this time from an unknown number. I opened it and felt my blood freeze. Photos of me, taken without my knowledge over the past week, at David's restaurant, running errands, meeting my friend Sarah for coffee. The final image showed me embracing David outside his restaurant, the angle making our innocent hug appear intimate. A message followed. What would Ryan think about his wife's afternoon activities? Perhaps Emma really would be better off at boarding school. David read the messages over my shoulder and swore. That's it. We're going to the police. No. I stood up, something hardening inside me. Martha wants to play games? Fine. But she forgot something important. What's that? I gathered the strips of my wedding dress, each piece a reminder of Martha's escalating war against me. I'm not just fighting for my marriage anymore. I'm fighting for my daughter, and unlike Martha, I don't need to play dirty to win. Julia. I'm going home, I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. It's time to show Ryan exactly who his mother really is. The antique vase shattered against the hardwood floor, its pieces scattering like broken promises. I stood frozen in the hallway, watching Martha's performance begin. Emma! Her voice carried upstairs. Come down here this instant! I'd been heading to the kitchen when I'd overheard her whispered phone conversation. Of course I have a plan. When Julia confronts me about the photos, I'll make sure Emma takes the blame for something valuable. Then we'll see who's the responsible parent. The sound of Emma's footsteps pulled me back to the present. My daughter appeared at the top of the stairs, still in her pajamas. What happened? Emma's voice trembled. Martha's face twisted into a mask of stern disappointment. Did you knock over great-grandmother's vase while running in the house? The one I specifically told you to be careful around? I didn't. Emma was in her room, I said, stepping forward. I've been standing here the whole time. Martha's eyes narrowed. Julia, please. I saw her running past just moments ago. That's interesting. I pulled out my phone, showing the video I'd started recording the moment I heard her plan. Because I saw something very different. The color drained from Martha's face. You were spying on me? Mom, what's going on? Ryan appeared from his home office, drawn by the commotion. Martha's tears appeared on cue. Oh, Ryan, I was just trying to teach Emma about responsibility. And Julia? She's trying to turn everyone against me. By breaking your own vase? I played the video. Martha's voice filled the hallway. When Julia confronts me about the photos. What photos? Ryan asked. Martha lunged for my phone. I stepped back, letting her momentum carry her forward. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall. The ones she took of me without my consent. I pulled up the threatening messages. The ones she used to suggest I was having an affair with my own brother. Ryan took my phone, scrolling through the messages. His jaw tightened. Mom? She's twisting everything. Martha's voice rose hysterically. I was protecting you, protecting Emma. Julia's been sneaking around, meeting that brother of hers in secret. For coffee, I cut in. At his restaurant, in public. Because my own home hasn't felt safe since you moved in. Emma's small voice broke through the tension. Grandma broke the vase. I saw her from upstairs. Martha spun toward Emma. Darling, you're confused. You know how your mother fills your head with... Don't! Ryan's voice was ice. Don't you dare try to manipulate my daughter. Ryan, sweetheart. The boarding school application? He advanced toward his mother. The deleted emails, the forged signatures, and now this? Martha's facade cracked. Everything I did for this family. Julia's not good enough for you, can't you see that? She's turning Emma soft, making her weak. The only weakness I see, Ryan said quietly, is your grip on reality. I gathered Emma into my arms, feeling her tremble. Go pack a bag, sweetheart. We're going to spend a few days at Uncle David's. No one is going anywhere, Martha blocked the stairs. This is my family. I won't let you destroy it. Your family? Ryan's laugh was hollow. You've been destroying it piece by piece since you moved in. The photo album, Julia's wedding dress, and now this? You're the one tearing us apart. The wedding dress? Martha's smile turned cruel. She deserved it. Parading around like she belongs here, like she's worthy of the Harrison name. That's enough. Ryan pulled out his phone. I'm calling a car service. Pack your things, Mom. You're moving into a hotel tonight. Martha's mask shattered completely. You can't do this to me. I'm your mother. And I'm your son, watching you try to destroy my wife and traumatize my child. Ryan's voice broke. I chose this family. My family. It's time for you to leave. As Martha stormed upstairs, hurling threats and accusations, I held Emma closer. The broken vase glittered around us like the remnants of Martha's control, finally shattered beyond repair. But in the fragments, I saw something else. The reflection of my family, stronger in their brokenness, ready to rebuild without Martha's poisonous influence. The war wasn't over. Martha's retreat would only make her more dangerous. But for the first time, we were fighting together. The hotel lobby gleamed with polished marble and false promises. Martha sat across from us, perfectly composed in her designer suit, while a team of lawyers arranged papers on the mahogany table between us. "It's quite simple," her lead attorney said. "Either Emma attends St. Catherine's or Mrs. Harrison will pursue full grandparental rights." Ryan's hand tightened around mine. "You can't be serious." "Oh, but I am." Martha's smile never reached her eyes. "I've documented everything. Julia's erratic behavior, her suspicious meetings, her attempts to alienate Emma from her family heritage." "By family heritage you mean you," I said. Martha's lawyer slid forward a thick folder. "We have witness statements from Emma's teachers about Julia's frequent absences from school events, documentation of emotional manipulation, evidence of an inappropriate relationship with her brother." "Those pictures were taken out of context," Ryan snapped. "You orchestrated all of this." "Did I?" Martha leaned forward. "Or did I simply observe a mother who's clearly unfit? The courts tend to favor stability, tradition, a prestigious boarding school education versus, what exactly? Afternoon cartoons and takeout dinners?" I stared at the legal documents, my vision blurring. Months of Martha's careful groundwork spread before us, altered dates on photographs, carefully edited text messages, statements from concerned neighbors she'd cultivated. "You've been planning this since you moved in," I whispered. "I've been protecting my granddaughter." Martha's mask slipped, revealing something desperate underneath. "Ryan, darling, surely you see that Emma deserves better, the same opportunities you had?" "I was miserable at boarding school," Ryan said quietly. "You were challenged, shaped into success." Martha's voice hardened. "Julia's making Emma soft, dependent. Just look at how the child clings to her. Because I'm her mother. For now." Martha nodded to her lawyer, who produced another document. "We are prepared to be generous. Joint custody, with Emma attending St. Catherine's. Or we can make this very public, very messy. Your choice." Ryan started to speak, but his phone buzzed. He checked it, his face draining of color. "What is it?" I asked. "She's..." He turned the phone toward me. On the screen, a news article showed David's restaurant, emergency vehicles crowding the street. The headline read, "Local restaurant shut down, health code violations." "Tragic timing," Martha said softly. "One might question the judgment of someone who associates with such questionable business practices. My brother's livelihood, destroyed in minutes, because of me, because he tried to help." "You're destroying everyone I love," I said. "No, Julia. You did that yourself by trying to come between me and my family." Martha stood, smoothing her jacket. "You have 24 hours to decide. Emma's future at St. Catherine's, or a very public custody battle that will expose every flaw, every mistake, every secret you've tried to hide." She paused at the door. "Oh, and Julia? I found your photo album. The memories you tried so desperately to preserve, they're gone now, just like everything else will be, unless you make the right choice." After she left, Ryan and I sat in silence, the weight of her ultimatum crushing us. "We could fight," he said finally, "and risk losing Emma completely." I pulled out my phone, showing him the latest text from David. "Health inspectors came out of nowhere. Everything's gone, Jules. Everything." "Julia, no." I stood up, my decision crystallizing like ice in my veins. "I won't let her destroy anyone else I love." "What are you saying?" I picked up the boarding school acceptance papers, my hands steady despite the trembling in my heart. "I'm saying we send Emma to St. Catherine's, and then..." "Then what?" I thought of my shredded wedding dress, my burned photos, my brother's ruined business. "Then I stopped playing by Martha's rules. She wants to teach Emma about family heritage? Fine. Let's show her what happens when you declare war on the wrong family." Ryan stared at me, seeing something new in my eyes, something that made him lean back slightly. Good. Because the woman who walked into this hotel was dead now, killed by Martha's final power play. And the one walking out? She had nothing left to lose. St. Catherine's Academy loomed before us, all Gothic spires and ivy-covered walls. Martha stood at the top of the stone steps, waiting to welcome her victory. Behind her, a photographer from the local paper adjusted his camera. "Right on schedule," Martha called out. "Emma, darling, come to grandmother." I kept hold of Emma's hand, Ryan flanking our other side. The manila envelope in my bag felt heavy with purpose. "Julia," Martha's smile tightened, "you're not planning to make a scene, are you? Think of the headlines." "Oh, I am." I handed Emma's bag to Ryan and climbed the steps. In fact, I brought some headline suggestions of my own. Martha's lawyer emerged from the shadows. "Mrs. Harrison, remember our agreement? The agreement's void." I pulled out my phone, dialing a number. "David, you're on speaker." My brother's voice filled the space between us. "Got the evidence right here, Jules. Health inspector confirmed it. Someone paid him to target the restaurant. Bank transfers, text messages, all trace back to a certain retired teacher's account." Martha's face hardened. "Lies." "Then there's this." I produced the manila envelope. "Remember Mrs. Chen? Emma's nurse? Turns out she keeps excellent records, including the time you tried to convince her Emma was being neglected at home. I was protecting... and these..." More papers spilled out. "Your financial records. Every bribe, every manipulated situation, every person you paid to spy on me. Did you really think I'd just surrender?" The photographer started snapping pictures. Martha lunged for him. "Stop that!" "Why?" I asked. "Isn't this what you wanted? Public attention? Let's give them a real story. How a respected teacher orchestrated a campaign of harassment against her daughter-in-law. How she destroyed a local business, manipulated medical records, all to gain control of her granddaughter." "You wouldn't dare," but fear had crept into Martha's voice. "I'll ruin you." "You already tried." Ryan stepped forward, Emma secure in his arms. "But here's what's going to happen instead. You're going to drop this custody threat. You're going to publicly apologize to Julia and David. And you're going to disappear from our lives." "Or what?" I held up my phone. "Or every newspaper in the state gets proof of your crimes. Every parent at your precious St. Catherine's learns what kind of woman you really are. Your reputation, your social standing, your whole carefully constructed image, gone. You can't prove? The nurse recorded your conversation, Martha. The health inspector kept his text messages. And your financial records?" I smiled. Let's just say Ryan isn't the only one good with numbers. Martha's lawyer quietly gathered his papers and retreated. The photographer kept shooting, capturing her unraveling moment by moment. "I am your mother," she hissed at Ryan. "No." He met her gaze steadily. "You're a woman who forgot that love isn't about control, that family isn't about power. Emma deserves better than your kind of legacy." "Mommy?" Emma's voice cut through the tension. "Can we go home now?" Martha made one last desperate grab for her granddaughter. I stepped between them, my voice low enough for only her to hear. "You took my photos, my memories. You tried to take my daughter. But you forgot something crucial, Martha. You taught Ryan everything he knows about power plays and manipulation. And I learned from watching you, too." "This isn't over," she whispered. "Actually, it is." I turned to the photographer. "I believe you have enough for your story. Respected teacher's attempted kidnapping scheme exposed should make quite a headline." Martha's face crumpled as she finally recognized her defeat. All her careful plans, her manipulations, her power, useless against the simple truth she'd tried to bury. Love doesn't need schemes or control. It just needs to be real. As we walked away, Emma's hand warm in mine, Ryan's arm steady around us both, I heard Martha's broken whisper behind us. "What have you done?" I didn't turn around. She already knew the answer. I'd done exactly what she taught me to do. Protect my family at any cost. The difference was, I'd won by telling the truth, not by burying it. And that would haunt her more than any revenge I could have planned. The small box arrived on a Tuesday, addressed to Emma in Martha's unmistakable handwriting. I turned it over in my hands, feeling its negligible weight, while Ryan watched from across the kitchen table. "We could throw it away," he offered. I shook my head. "She deserves to choose." Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the art supplies from her 7th birthday party last week. She barely glanced at the package. "Is it from Grandma Martha?" "Yes, sweetheart." She returned to her drawing. "I don't want it." Ryan and I exchanged looks. In the 3 months since St. Catherine's, Martha's carefully constructed world had crumbled. The newspaper story had exposed everything: the bribes, the manipulation, the orchestrated campaign against our family. She'd retreated to a small apartment across town, her social circle evaporating as quickly as her reputation. "Maybe we should see what it is," I suggested, though part of me wanted to burn it unopened. Emma shrugged, so I carefully unwrapped the package. Inside lay my missing photo album, its blue cover faded but intact. A note rested on top. I kept them safe. With trembling fingers, I opened the album. Every photo was there, perfectly preserved. Emma's birth, her first steps, family vacations and quiet moments at home. Martha hadn't destroyed them after all. "Look, Emma." I knelt beside her. "These are all our memories." She finally looked up, her small fingers tracing a photo of herself as a toddler. "Why did Grandma Martha take them?" "Sometimes," Ryan said, joining us on the floor, "people do wrong things because they're afraid of losing what they love." "Did she love us wrong?" "Yes," I answered, surprising myself with the gentleness in my voice. "But that doesn't mean we have to love wrong in return." Emma considered this, then reached for her art supplies. She selected a recent photo from her birthday party, one showing her blowing out candles while Ryan and I watched, David capturing the moment on his new camera. Carefully, she pasted it into the album's final empty page. "There," she declared. "Now it's finished properly." The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw David's car in the driveway. He'd been coming over more often since reopening his restaurant, bringing food and stories and the kind of laughter we'd almost forgotten how to share. "Uncle David!" Emma ran to greet him. I started to close the album, but Ryan caught my hand. "We could send her a copy," he said quietly, "of Emma's birthday photo." "Why?" "Because you won." He squeezed my fingers. "You protected our family without becoming what she feared you were. Maybe that's worth acknowledging." I thought about Martha, alone in her apartment, surrounded by the consequences of her choices. "Would you have sent her away if I hadn't gathered the evidence?" "I don't know." His honesty was like a balm. "But I'm grateful you showed me the truth, even when it hurt." David appeared in the doorway, Emma on his hip. "Who's ready for my new pasta recipe, and why does my favorite niece have glitter in her hair?" "I'm your only niece," Emma giggled. As they headed to the kitchen, I picked up the photo album, weighing its history in my hands. The last page caught my eye, Emma's birthday photo, but something else too. She'd drawn around it, creating a frame of hearts and stars. And at the bottom, in her careful first-grade handwriting, my family. No mention of who was missing, no space left empty for what was lost, just the simple truth of who remained, who chose to love right instead of hold tight. I took a fresh envelope from Ryan's desk and slipped the birthday photo inside. On a small card, I wrote only, "Emma's 7th birthday. She's happy. No accusations, no triumph, just an offered moment, a glimpse of the joy Martha had tried too hard to control." Whether she'd understand it as mercy or torment, I couldn't say. But as I sealed the envelope, I realized it didn't matter anymore. We had our memories back, but more importantly, we were making new ones, better ones. Ones where love didn't need to be earned or proved, it just needed to be given, freely and without conditions. That would be our legacy to Emma. And maybe, somewhere in her solitude, Martha would finally understand what she'd lost by trying to possess it instead.
The land had been in my family for 4 generations, stretching across 35 pristine acres of rolling hills and ancient oaks. When grandfather called to offer Ryan and me a piece of it to build our dream home, I felt the weight of legacy pressing into my chest like a stone. "I won't live forever, Madeline," he said, his voice crackling through the phone. "And I'd rather see you build something beautiful here while I'm still around to enjoy it." I gripped the phone tighter, pacing across our cramped apartment kitchen. "Are you sure about this? It's too much." "Nothing's too much for family," He paused, and I could picture him sitting in his worn leather chair, looking out over the property. Besides, that corner plot by the creek has been waiting for something special. Ryan walked in just as I hung up, his face lighting up when I shared the news. But his smile faltered slightly, a shadow I should have paid more attention to. "We should tell my parents," he said, already reaching for his phone. That's where it all started to unravel. Gloria arrived at our apartment the very next day, uninvited and armed with a folder full of house plans she'd apparently been collecting. She spread them across our coffee table like a general planning an invasion. "Now, if we're smart about this," she said, tapping a finger against a particularly elaborate blueprint, "we can build something that accommodates all of us." "All of us?" I echoed, my coffee turning bitter in my mouth. "Well, your father-in-law and I have been thinking about downsizing," Gloria continued, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes sharp as needles. "And with the market being what it is, it just makes sense to pool our resources. We could build a proper family compound." Ryan shifted beside me, his shoulder touching mine but somehow feeling miles away. "Mum, we haven't even started planning yet." "That's exactly why this is the perfect time." She pulled out more papers, financial projections, cost analyses, all meticulously prepared. "We could contribute significantly to the construction costs. It's a win-win situation." I watched my dream home transform into a nightmare before my eyes. The quiet mornings I'd imagined, drinking coffee on our private porch, shattered under the weight of Gloria's plans. Ryan's hand found mine, squeezing gently, but I couldn't squeeze back. "We'll need to think about it," I managed to say, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. Gloria's smile tightened. "Of course, dear, but don't think too long. Frank and I need to make decisions about our house soon." After she left, Ryan tried to reason with me. "It could work out," he said, his voice soft but pleading. "They'd help with the costs, and it's not like they'd be in our space all the time." I stared at the plans she'd left behind, at the carefully drawn lines that would box us in forever. "Your mother's never needed walls to invade our space." "Madeline, no." I stood up, gathering the papers into a pile. This was supposed to be our fresh start, our home, not another extension of your parents' control. "They're family," he said, as if that explained everything, as if that excused everything. I walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawl, thinking of grandfather's land waiting for us, waiting for me to make a choice that would shape the rest of our lives. "Family doesn't always mean living together," I said finally. "Sometimes it means knowing when to keep your distance," but I could already feel it. The subtle shift in the air, the way Ryan's silence spoke volumes. Gloria had planted her seeds of manipulation, and they were already taking root. I just didn't know then how deep they would grow, or how much I would have to sacrifice to tear them out. The architect's office felt too small with Gloria hovering over my shoulder, pointing at every detail on the preliminary sketches. 2 weeks had passed since her announcement about moving in, and somehow she'd managed to insert herself into every planning meeting. "The master suite needs to be on the ground floor," she said, tapping the paper. "Frank's knees aren't what they used to be." I dug my nails into my palm under the table. "We're looking at the wrong plans. These are for the main house. Ryan and I wanted to discuss the cottage design first." The architect, James, glanced between us. "I have those right here." "Oh, sweetie," Gloria cut in, her laugh like wind chimes in a storm. "We've moved past that idea. It makes much more financial sense to build one larger home. Right, Ryan?" Ryan sat at the end of the table, suddenly fascinated by his phone screen. The silence stretched until I wanted to scream. "Actually," I said, forcing my voice steady, "we haven't moved past anything. The cottage was our original plan, and it's what we can afford." Gloria's smile tightened. "That's why we're offering to help. Frank and I have excellent credit, and with our contribution—" "What contribution?" The words shot out before I could stop them. "We haven't seen any actual numbers from you. No bank statements, no proof of funds, nothing." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Ryan finally looked up, his face pale. Madeline, maybe we should discuss this at home. Yes, Gloria agreed, gathering her designer purse. This isn't the place for such conversations. I'll stop by tomorrow with all the paperwork. But I knew she wouldn't, just like she hadn't the last 3 times she'd promised. Later that night, I found Ryan in our home office, staring at spreadsheets. The blue light from his monitor cast shadows under his eyes. The numbers don't work, he said without looking up. Even with both our salaries, we can barely afford the cottage. A house big enough for 4 adults would be impossible, I finished, unless your parents really do contribute half. He rubbed his face. Mum says they're just waiting for their house to sell. Have they even listed it? His silence was answer enough. I moved behind him, placing my hands on his shoulders, feeling the tension there. Ryan, we need to be realistic. Your mother is... My phone buzzed. A text from Gloria to our family group chat. Great news. Lisa's house just sold. She'll need a place to stay while looking for a new home. So glad we're building plenty of space. Ryan's phone lit up seconds later. I watched his expression shift as he read the message, watched the conflict play across his face like shadows. She can't just... I started, but the words died in my throat as more messages flooded in. Lisa, you guys are literally lifesavers. The kids are so excited. Frank, family takes care of family. Gloria, we'll all be together just like when you were children. My hands dropped from Ryan's shoulders. Did you know about this? Mom mentioned Lisa was having trouble selling her house, but I didn't think that she'd invite her to live with us. In our house? The house we haven't even started building yet. He stood up, reaching for me, but I stepped back. It would just be temporary, he said, but his voice wavered, until she gets back on her feet. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. Behind me, Ryan's phone kept buzzing with more messages, more plans being made without our input, more of our future being carved up and distributed among his family. Your mother's not waiting for their house to sell, I said finally. She never intended to sell it at all. This was her plan from the beginning, to take grandfather's gift and turn it into her own private compound. That's not fair, Ryan protested, but it was weak, uncertain. I turned to face him, something cold and hard crystallizing in my chest. No, it's not fair. None of this is fair. And I'm done pretending it is. The look on his face told me he knew what was coming next would change everything. He just didn't know how much. The real estate listing appeared in my social media feed like a slap to the face. Gloria and Frank's house, the one they supposedly needed to sell to help finance our new home, wasn't just unlisted, it was being renovated. I stared at the contractor's Facebook post, complete with before and after photos of their kitchen remodel. Another beautiful upgrade for our favorite repeat customers. The timestamp showed it was posted 3 days ago. My hands shook as I drove to my parents' house, needing somewhere safe to process this betrayal. Mom was in the garden when I arrived, her hands deep in soil, but one look at my face and she was leading me inside. They're spending thousands on renovations, I said, showing her the photos, while Ryan and I are drowning in construction estimates, trying to figure out how to afford a house big enough for their entire family. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. Have you shown this to Ryan? He's at work, at the job he took specifically to earn more for this house. I laughed, but it came out wrong, twisted. A house that's becoming a Carter family compound, funded entirely by us. Madeline, Mom's voice was gentle but firm. Your father and I can help. We've been talking about it. No, the word came out sharp enough to make her flinch. I won't let Gloria's manipulation cost my family money too. We're not doing it for Gloria. We're doing it for you and Ryan. That's exactly what Gloria's counting on. I stood up, pacing. She knows someone will step in to fix this. That's how she operates, creates problems and waits for others to solve them. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Mom's coming over tonight to discuss finances. Says she has good news. Another buzz. Gloria. Bringing dinner. And wait until you see the new plans I found. I need to go, I told Mom, already heading for the door. I have to get home before you can think this through. She caught my arm. Honey, you're angry, rightfully so, but don't do anything rash. I'm done being careful, I said, pulling away. Done pretending everything's fine while she dismantles our future piece by piece. I made it home just as Gloria's car pulled up. She emerged with takeout bags and a portfolio stuffed with papers, her smile bright and brittle. Perfect timing, she chirped. Ryan's stuck in traffic, but we can get started. I held the door open, watching her sweep into our apartment like she owned it, like she owned us. Before we look at anything, I said, closing the door quietly, I'd love to hear about your kitchen renovation. Gloria froze halfway to the dining table. My what? I pulled up the contractor's post on my phone and held it out. The one you had done this week, it looks expensive. Oh, that, she waved dismissively. Just a few necessary updates before we sell. Buyers expect you're not selling. The certainty in my voice made her turn. You never were. You've been lying to us for weeks, making promises you never intended to keep. Now, Madeline, no. I stepped closer. You've manipulated Ryan, invaded our marriage, and tried to hijack my grandfather's gift. And for what? So you can maintain control over your son? Her face hardened. Everything I've done is for this family. Ryan understands that, even if you don't. Ryan understands guilt. He understands obligation, because that's what you've taught him. The sound of keys in the door made us both turn. Ryan walked in, looking between us with growing alarm. What's going on? I handed him my phone without a word, watched his face as he scrolled through the photos, as understanding dawned. Mum? His voice cracked on the word. What is this? It's not what you think, Gloria started, but I cut her off. Show him the plans, I said, the ones you brought tonight. Show him how you are going to convince us to take on a mortgage we can't afford, while you sit in your newly renovated house and play puppet master with our lives. The portfolio slipped from her hands, papers scattering across the floor. In the silence that followed, I could hear the sound of everything breaking, Gloria's facade, Ryan's illusions, and maybe, just maybe, the chains of manipulation that had bound us for so long. The construction loan paperwork sat unsigned on our kitchen table when Lisa burst through our front door without knocking. Her mascara was smeared, 2 kids trailing behind her like bewildered ducklings. Mom said I could stay here, she announced, dropping a duffel bag on our floor. Just until the divorce is final. I gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Lisa, we haven't even broken ground yet. Oh. She blinked, looking around our apartment as if seeing it for the first time. But Mom said. Ryan emerged from our bedroom, his face a mask of confusion. What's going on? Your sister's moving in, I said, my voice eerily calm. Apparently. The kids, Emma and Jack, aged 7 and 5, were already exploring, their small hands touching everything. Lisa collapsed onto our couch, fresh tears starting. Jason's lawyer served me papers today. He's claiming I'm an unfit mother. She buried her face in her hands. I need somewhere stable to live, or I could lose custody. Ryan moved toward his sister, ever the protector. Of course you can stay. Right, Madeline? The look he gave me was pleading, desperate. The same look he'd given me when Gloria needed money for her emergency last month. When Frank needed help with his medical bills the month before that. My phone buzzed. Gloria. Isn't it wonderful? The whole family together again. I'll bring dinner. We can discuss the new house plans. No. The word came out sharp enough to make Lisa flinch. Madeline, Ryan started, but I cut him off. This isn't happening. Not again. I turned to Lisa. Your mother knew about the custody situation weeks ago, didn't she? Lisa's silence was answer enough. She waited until now, until we were about to sign for the construction loan, to spring this on us, because she knew Ryan wouldn't say no, not with the kids involved. It's not like that, Lisa protested weakly. Then where were you planning to stay before this? What was Gloria's original plan? More silence. Ryan stepped between us. Does it matter? She needs help now. It matters because your mother is using your sister's crisis to force our hand, to make sure we build the bigger house, to trap us all exactly where she wants us. The kids had stopped exploring, sensing the tension. Emma clutched her brother's hand, their eyes wide. You're being paranoid, Ryan said, but his voice wavered. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. Behind me, I could hear Lisa sniffling, the kids whispering, Ryan shifting his weight, the sound of my life being rearranged without my consent. 3 bedrooms, I said finally. What? I turned back to face them. That's what we can afford to build. 3 bedrooms, not the 5-bedroom mansion your mother's planning. So either she takes Lisa and the kids in at her newly renovated house or what? Lisa demanded, standing up. We live on the street. Or you figure out your own solution that doesn't involve destroying my marriage. Ryan recoiled like I'd slapped him. That's not fair. None of this is fair. I grabbed my keys and phone. Your mother orchestrated this whole situation, and you're all playing your parts perfectly. Where are you going? Ryan's voice cracked. To see my grandfather. To tell him what's really happening with his gift. I paused at the door. And then I'm calling a lawyer. A lawyer? Lisa's voice rose. For what? To protect what's mine. I met Ryan's eyes. All of it. The last thing I saw before closing the door was Emma, tugging on Ryan's sleeve, asking in her small voice, Uncle Ryan, why is Aunt Madeline so mad? I waited until I reached my car before the tears came, hot and angry. My phone kept buzzing, Gloria's messages growing more frequent, more demanding. I switched it off and started the engine. They thought they had me cornered, but they'd forgotten one crucial detail. Sometimes the person you push too far isn't the one who breaks. Sometimes they're the one who pushes back. Grandfather's study smelled of leather and old books, unchanged since my childhood visits. He sat behind his mahogany desk, examining the documents I'd brought, the construction plans, Gloria's emails, Lisa's custody papers, each piece of evidence laid out like a prosecutor's case. She's quite thorough, he said finally, removing his reading glasses. I'll give her that. I need to stop this. My voice sounded hollow, even to me. But Ryan is caught in the middle. Grandfather leaned back, studying me. Just as Gloria planned, a knock at the door made us both turn. Mom entered, carrying a folder I'd never seen before. I found them, she said, placing it on the desk. Grandfather opened it, revealing photographs from decades ago. A younger Gloria, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize, arm around a woman who could have been her twin. Your mother-in-law's sister, he explained. They had a falling out over their parents' estate. Gloria manipulated the situation until she got everything. The house, the assets, even their mother's jewelry collection. What happened to the sister? Moved across the country, never spoke to Gloria again. He pushed the folder toward me. History has a way of repeating itself. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ryan. Please come home, we need to talk. I can't let her win, I said, gripping the phone tight, but I can't lose Ryan either. Mum touched my shoulder. Then don't play her game. Play your own. Grandfather pulled out a legal pad, his pen hovering over the paper. Tell me what you want, not what you're afraid of losing, what you want to achieve. The answer came surprisingly easy. I want our home, our life, without Gloria's manipulation. Then let's make that happen. He began writing. The land is still in my name. We can structure the ownership in a way that protects your interests. Ryan won't like that. Ryan needs to choose, Mum said gently, and you need to be prepared for either choice. My phone buzzed again. Gloria this time. Family dinner tonight. We need to discuss the situation like adults. A plan began forming, not born of revenge, but of necessity, of survival. I need a favor, I told Grandfather. Something that might seem cruel, but... He held up his hand. Sometimes kindness looks like cruelty to those who mean us harm. When I left an hour later, I had more than just a plan. I had leverage. The house was full when I returned home. Gloria's car in the driveway, Lisa's kids' shoes scattered in the entryway, the smell of Gloria's signature lasagna wafting from the kitchen. A perfect family tableau. Ryan met me at the door, his face tight with worry. "Where have you been? Mum's been waiting to ambush me." I kept my voice low, steady, like she ambushed us with Lisa's situation. "That's not Madeline." Gloria appeared, all smiles and concern. "We've been so worried. Come, sit down. We need to discuss this as a family." I looked around the room, at Lisa curled on our couch, at Frank avoiding eye contact, at the kids playing obliviously on our floor, at Ryan standing between his mother and me, literally and figuratively. "You're right," I said, pulling out the folder grandfather had given me. "Let's discuss family, starting with what happened to your sister, Gloria." The color drained from her face. "How did you—" Or we could discuss the trust my grandfather just set up, the one that ensures this land and whatever we build on it stays in my name alone. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "Wouldn't I?" I turned to Ryan. "Your mother taught me well, about family, about protection, about getting what you want." The silence that followed was deafening. In it, I could hear the sound of carefully laid plans crumbling, of power shifting, of choices demanding to be made, and somewhere, beneath it all, the whisper of justice finally finding its voice. The rental agreement sat between us on the kitchen table like a loaded gun. Ryan hadn't spoken since I'd placed it there, his eyes fixed on the document that would effectively evict his entire family from our unbuilt home. "It's already signed," I said into the silence. "By grandfather and me. You did this behind my back." His voice was flat, emotionless, like your mother did everything behind mine. The front door opened before he could respond. Gloria swept in, Lisa trailing behind her with the kids. They froze at the sight of us, sensing the tension. "What's going on?" Gloria's eyes locked onto the papers. "What is that?" "Our solution." I stood, forcing myself to meet her gaze. "We're renting out the house once it's built. To strangers. For at least 5 years. The color drained from Gloria's face. "You can't. The land is in my name now, legally protected by a trust." I turned to Lisa. "You should call Jason's lawyer. Tell him you're moving back in with your parents, in their perfectly good house." "Ryan," Gloria's voice cracked. "Say something." But Ryan just stared at the rental agreement, his hands clenched into fists on the table. "This isn't about the house anymore," I continued. "It's about control, just like it was with your sister Gloria, the one you drove away over your parents' estate." Frank stepped forward for the first time. "What sister? The one she never told you about?" I pulled out the old photographs. The one she destroyed to get what she wanted. Gloria lunged for the photos, but I held them out of reach. "Tell them, Gloria. Tell them how you manipulated everyone then, just like you're doing now." "You don't understand," she hissed. "I did what I had to do, for family." "No." Ryan's voice cut through the tension. "You did it for yourself." Hope flared in my chest, until I saw his face. "Just like Madeline's doing now." The words hit me like a physical blow. He stood up, looking at me with eyes I barely recognized. "You're both the same," he continued. "Manipulating, scheming, using family against each other. I can't—" He shook his head. "I won't choose between you." "Ryan, I'm staying at Dave's tonight." He grabbed his keys. "Maybe longer. I need space from all of this." Gloria moved to follow him, but he held up his hand. "From you too, Mom. From everyone." The door closed behind him with devastating finality. Emma tugged at Lisa's sleeve. "Why is Uncle Ryan leaving?" No one answered. Gloria sank into a chair, the fight draining from her. Lisa gathered her children, murmuring something about bedtime, and hurried them out. Frank followed, leaving me alone with my mother-in-law. "Are you happy now?" Gloria's voice was barely a whisper. "You've torn everything apart." You did that. But the words felt hollow, meaningless. Did I? She looked up, and for the first time, I saw real pain in her eyes. My sister never spoke to me again. 30 years of silence. Is that what you want for Ryan? To force him to choose until he chooses nothing? I gripped the back of a chair, suddenly unsteady. You gave me no choice. There's always a choice. She stood slowly, gathering her purse. I chose power over family once. Now you have too. Remember that when you're sitting alone in your perfect empty house. She left me standing there, surrounded by the wreckage of my victory. The rental agreement seemed to mock me from the table, its legal language spelling out the cost of winning at all costs. My phone buzzed, a text from Ryan. I love you, but I don't like who we've all become. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. I walked to the window, watching Gloria's car disappear into the gathering storm. The same window where, weeks ago, I dreamed of our future home. Now all I could see was my own reflection, distorted by raindrops, looking more like Gloria than I'd ever admit. 3 days after Ryan left, I found Gloria waiting on grandfather's front porch. She held a manila envelope in trembling hands, her usual polished appearance slightly frayed at the edges. We need to talk, she said, her voice hoarse, about your grandfather's trust. I crossed my arms, maintaining my distance. There's nothing to discuss. Actually, there is. She pulled documents from the envelope. I had my lawyer look into the property records. The original deed has some interesting provisions. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face neutral. What provisions? The land can't be divided without unanimous family consent, including Frank's family, who owned the adjacent property 50 years ago. The world tilted slightly. You're lying. Am I? She held out the papers. Your grandfather's trust is meaningless if the land can't be legally transferred. And guess who tracked down Frank's cousins? The screen door creaked behind us. Grandfather emerged, leaning on his cane. I wondered when you'd find that clause, Gloria. She straightened, triumph flickering across her face. Then you know that you'd do exactly what you did to your sister. He moved beside me. That you'd dig and scheme until you found leverage. That's why I had the clause removed last month. The papers slipped from Gloria's fingers, scattering across the porch. What? The land transfer was completed weeks ago. He pulled out his own envelope. These are the updated records, but that's not why you're really here, is it? Gloria's facade cracked. Ryan won't answer my calls. Or mine, I admitted quietly. He's staying with your sister, isn't he? Grandfather's question made Gloria flinch. The one you haven't spoken to in 30 years. How did you... Because she called me yesterday. He handed me his phone. Ryan found her, wanted to understand what really happened all those years ago. I scrolled through the messages, each one revealing more of Gloria's past manipulations. The property theft, the forged documents, the systematic isolation of her sister, until nothing remained but silence. I did what I had to do, Gloria whispered. No. I looked up from the phone. You did what was easy. Manipulation is always easier than honesty. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I stepped closer. Because I almost became you. Using the trust, the rental agreement, I was ready to destroy everything to win. She backed away, but I continued. The difference is, I saw what I was becoming. Ryan helped me see it. That's why he left, not to punish us, but to save himself, to break the cycle. He's my son, and my husband, and his own person. I held out the phone. Your sister wants to talk to you, so does Ryan, but not until you understand what you've done, what we've both done. Gloria stared at the phone like it might bite her. Behind us, Grandfather cleared his throat. Sometimes, Gloria, losing everything is the only way to find what matters. She reached for the phone with shaking hands. As she read her sister's messages, tears began falling. Real ones this time, not the calculated drops she'd used so often for manipulation. I don't know how to be different, she whispered. Neither do I admitted, But I want to learn. For Ryan, for myself. The land is still yours, Grandfather said gently. Both of yours, you and Ryan. What you build on it, whether it's walls or bridges, that's your choice. Gloria looked up from the phone, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. I don't know how to fix this. Start with truth, I said. It's the only foundation worth building on. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. I'm ready to talk, all of us, together. Gloria and I exchanged glances, years of manipulation and counter-manipulation giving way to something fragile and new. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. Sometimes, I realized, the greatest victory isn't in winning the battle, but in choosing not to fight at all. The cottage plans lay spread across Grandfather's kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the windows. 3 bedrooms, not 5. Simple, not grand. Ours, not theirs. Ryan traced the outline of what would be our bedroom. It's smaller than the original design. But it's what we can afford, I said, what we actually need. Gloria sat across from us, her hands wrapped around an untouched coffee mug. She'd been quieter lately, since her sister's visit last week. Their reunion had been awkward, painful, healing, all at once. Lisa found an apartment, she said suddenly, near the kids' school. That's good. Ryan's voice was gentle but firm. She needs her own space. We all do. Gloria's fingers tightened around the mug. Frank and we're keeping our house, but we're learning to knock first. I caught Ryan's slight smile at that. We'd established boundaries over the past few weeks. Hard ones, necessary ones. No unannounced visits, no financial entanglements, no emotional manipulation disguised as help. The foundation work starts next week, I said, changing the subject. Grandfather wants to watch them break ground. He's a good man. Gloria met my eyes. Better than I deserved. Mom, no, let me finish. She pushed away from the table, standing. I spent so long building walls to keep my family close that I couldn't see I was actually trapping us all. But walls can come down. If you're brave enough to take the first brick out. She moved to the window, looking out at the land where our home would stand. I won't ask to live here. I won't ask for anything except the chance to do better. Ryan reached for my hand under the table. I squeezed back, feeling the strength in his grip, the certainty that had returned. We're thinking of putting in a garden, I said. Nothing fancy, just vegetables maybe. If you wanted to help plan it. Gloria turned, hope flickering across her face. I'd like that. The screen door creaked and Grandfather shuffled in, carrying his morning paper. The contractors called. They're ready when you are. Ryan stood, pulling me up with him. Then let's go break ground. We walked together across the property, Ryan and me, Gloria and Grandfather, even Frank, who'd been waiting in his car. The morning air was crisp, full of possibility. The contractor handed me the shovel first. I drove it into the earth where our foundation would be, feeling the resistance, the give. Ryan's hands covered mine on the handle, and together we turned the first soil. Your grandmother would have loved this, Grandfather said softly. She always believed in building bridges, not barriers. I watched Gloria touch the freshly turned earth, something shifting in her expression. Understanding, maybe, or acceptance. The ground here would support walls, yes, but walls designed to shelter, not imprison. We should document this, Frank said, pulling out his phone. First day of construction. We gathered together, the morning sun warming our backs. As Frank counted down for the photo, I felt Ryan's arm around my waist, solid and sure. Felt Gloria's careful distance, not too close, not too far. Felt Grandfather's quiet pride. The camera clicked, capturing the moment. Not perfect, not completely healed, but real. A foundation of truth instead of manipulation, of boundaries instead of barriers. Later, as we walked back to the house, Ryan hung back with me. You okay? I looked at the construction markers, the piles of lumber waiting to become our home. At Gloria ahead of us, walking arm in arm with Frank, leaving us our space. I thought revenge would feel better than forgiveness, I admitted. But I was wrong. About everything? No. I smiled, remembering the journey that had brought us here. Just about how to fight for what matters. The wind rustled through the old oaks, carrying away the last echoes of bitterness. We had chosen our ground, set our boundaries, laid our foundation. What we would build now, that was the real test. But for the first time, I was ready for it. Ready to construct something new from the ruins of what we'd torn down. Not a fortress, not a prison, just a home.